Press the on-air button. Not flashing. We should be live.
Are we?
Well, I think so. I think so.
It says story time.
Yeah,
I like the story time sign you have this time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think that's really nice.
Okay, and let's shift to cue on camera. There you go.
All right. So welcome everybody to Storytime and Painting.
Storytime 101.
And this is Ginger, and I'm just telling stories about the people in my life and the people in my life that were interesting characters, and I find amazingly interesting, actually. So what I'm as I paint, which this painting has already been sold. It's not a tutorial. It was part of a group of paintings that were included in a special sale we had in our academy this year.
It's still in effect for another couple days.
From November to the end of this month, December.
Of 2023.
So it's almost over. And anybody that signed up for, for a year in our academy, and during those months, or 2 years or 3 years, depending on the level, they get a free, they get a complimentary painting, and anywhere from 6 by 8 to 8 by 10.
8
so
by
if those
10,
are
9 by
kind of
12,
new to this and wondering, because again, it's not a tutorial. I'm using an 8 by 10 canvas with absorbent ground because I'm going for more of a watercolor effect with this painting. And I'm going to be just kind of reminiscing about my Aunt Sally. Now, this was my mother's, adopted mother's sister. And I got to say, she was one of the nicest people I have ever met in my entire life. And it was hard to believe that these two ladies came from the same family, really, when you thought about it, because it was hard to believe, because they were night and day in temperament and personality and how they saw the world, okay? And when some of you may know from other story times that that I was adopted by, well, sort of adopted, not legally, but as far as a kid, I thought I had been adopted by the judge and his wife, Lucille and Bill Wilkins. And Bill was a Superior Court judge, had been a judge on the Nuremberg trials. There's a book about him called The Sword and the Gravel. I think somebody else bought it. Got a used one on Amazon, his book that he wrote. And so this is kind of the story of growing. I came into their lives when I was 5 years old, and came in and out of their lives through summer camps and boarding schools, and being passed off to another couple to live with for a while. I know you're going, what? And that's another story. But that happened. And but one of my favorite people that I ever met through my mother was Aunt Sally, and adopted mother. She was Lucille, or my mother, who is referred to. Her nickname was Punky. Lucille was the youngest of 6 children. She had 4 older sisters and an older brother, and they were born in Yakima, Washington. Back when my mother rode a horse to school, they were in their 90s when they died. She was in her 40s when they took us in to live with them, and Bill was in his 50s. So they were old parents, no question about it. They were old parents, and and honestly, you can't. I'll tell you what, you can't. So I don't want you to think I'm not appreciative, because if they had not taken us in, the bank would have kept hiring charlatans to raise us, horrible people. And the child abuse would have been rampant, yes? So I have to say, in all fairness, that we were much better off with the judge and his wife than we ever would have been had they not taken us in, and I think one has to say that, okay? So even though our life was a bit unique, and that's sort of an understatement, I can't imagine what it would have been like had they not come along. Because up until I was 5 years old, we were living in the house that my parents had lived in until they died. One of the houses, but until they died. And my mother had died just when my sister was 3 years old, and I was just not quite a year old when she died. Okay, and my father had died that Christmas before that, right in December. He had died, and he was in his 80s. Okay. Well, it's hard to know how old he was because he, according to family lore, they didn't have Social Security numbers in those days, so he took his brother's name and went by that to show he was younger. And that's kind of tricky, yes? And yes? Well, that's what he did. So enough about him. Enough about that man. Enough about that man. I'm using Artisto pen to kind of do a little bit of outlining so I don't lose my chalk. This will kind of melt away, so I just want to make sure I think I can keep these lines and some of these, but I wanted to make sure that I had this Artisto pen. So I'm sure when we had first come to live with the judge and his wife, Punky, that I'm sure we were introduced to Aunt Sally, but I don't have any clear memory of her until much later. And she was a lovely lady and extremely nice. She had her son lived up the road from us, and he sold insurance and had 3 kids. And we had moved out to Bellevue, and we lived in the country and so forth. And I remember going to spending the night at Aunt Sally's one time, and she lived in this really kind of sad little shack in Lake Washington, and I mean, it was sad. It was old, but there were these beautiful lilac trees out that she had planted, and roses. They were quite something. So she was into gardens, and even though she didn't have any money, and her husband was very old, okay, and I mean really ancient, like in his 70s, like, ancient people, right? When you're 5, anybody over 20 looks ancient. Even 20-year-olds kind of do, right? But anyway, so let's try this again. So anyway, that's how I met Aunt Sally. But this story isn't about how I met Aunt Sally. It's about how Aunt Sally met Uncle Bill, because her husband's name was Bill too. And Sally and my mother, like I say, they grew up. They were in the 1920s as teenagers, and Sally was a bit older. And in Yakima, Washington, at that time, a big band had come to town. Do you remember that? The John Dorsey and the big bands, those, and they had come and were playing in their town. She was a teenager, and she was raised, and her parents they were raised Catholic. My mother was raised as a Catholic. So having children out of wedlock was probably not the thing you wanted to, let your parents find out about. But this man literally swept her off her feet. And I tell you what, my Aunt Sally, when she was 19, was just absolutely stunning. You know what I mean? She was so pretty. And they got engaged, and he told her that they would get married. she could come on the road with him. And you got to know the teenagers, I don't care whether it's today or, you know, in the early 1900s, kids are the same, really, aren't they?
Nothing changes.
Nothing really changes, does it? You know what I'm saying, right? So she was swept off her feet, and of course, you know, she got, not of course, but unfortunately, she found herself pregnant. And I'm telling you what, if you think being pregnant out of wedlock is a big deal, even today, being pregnant in the 20s was just, I mean, you're talking about shunned with a big scarlet letter. Everybody hates you. My mother was furious with her. And she was shuffled off into town. She was kicked out of the house, for sure. She was sent into town. And that's where she had to live because they were mad. My parents were really angry at the whole thing. All right? And my grandparents, adopted grandparents, who I never met. They had long died before my parents ever adopted me. So anyhow, Sally, my mother remembers visiting her in town before she got before she met Bill, and you know, and she had an apartment, and it was pretty bleak. I think my mother's, you know, smuggled food to her and stuff like that because things were rough for Sally and the baby. And her parents were having nothing to do with it, okay? So, interestingly enough, there was a man in town who was very wealthy, and he had a car dealership. And that was a big deal. Even today, owning a car dealership is no small thing. You think, you know, it just isn't. If you own a car dealership, even back then and even today, that says, you know, you got a little coin, right? Quite a bit of coin to open a car dealership, yes? So, and Bill didn't care about the baby. He was a lot older than her. And he said, listen, he says, marry me and I'll take care of you. And he says, I don't care what anybody says. You can hold your head up high in the town. Yakima was such a small town. Everybody gossiped and talked, and it was rough on the other kids too, I'm sure. So anyway, Aunt Sally married Uncle Bill. And this sort of, suddenly she was a respectable woman, could come home, you know, I mean, her parents were much happier, you know what I mean? They just were on hearing that she had gotten married. And so and that was fine. And her son was a lovely child, never in his life had a date. Ever got into trouble. He just never did. He just never got into trouble. He was a great kid from the time, you know, I don't know what the deal was, but maybe because of the hardship of his mom, his name was Gene, and Gene just was a great kid. And I met Gene when he was like married and had 3 kids and lived up the road from us in Bellevue, Washington. But back when he was a kid. So this is, as the story goes on this, okay, you guys, as the story goes, that the Depression came. So it's right, if you were to Google it, so what time period was this when the Depression hit? John, can you Google that for me?
Absolutely, boss.
The Depression hit, and suddenly Bill lost his car dealership, and he had no money. He went from being one of the wealthiest men in Yakima to penniless overnight.
The Great Depression was from 1929 to 1939.
So that ought to give you an idea of the time period we're talking about, okay? In rural America, which would have been Yakima, Washington. And you know, the priest wouldn't baptize the baby, and you know, on and on it went, right? So anyhow, Sally stayed with Uncle Bill, even though times were hard, because he'd stayed with her when times were hard. So she had, it wasn't a love match by any things, but it was a loyalty match. Make sense? She was going to be loyal to that man because he had saved her, and literally had saved her, I gotta say, from 1929 judgmental Yakima, Washington, right? For sure, he had saved her from that. So anyhow, time passed, and they I don't know. I only met her after Uncle Bill was extreme. You know, remember, he was a lot older. He was very ill, had Alzheimer's and some other problems, and so when we went to stay with her, I think this was before Social Security, John. When you were old in this country, you had nothing, right? So anyway, it was tough, you know. The goings were tough for Uncle Bill and her, and so anyway, I remember spending the night at her house, and she had this little crummy house, and it was up against a hill down by the shipyards, a little tiny one-bedroom house. I don't think we ever spent the night. If we did, we slept on the couch. I don't quite remember. We might have been sleeping on the couch. Anyway, I liked Aunt Sally, and I think we went over there a couple of times, and she was just nice. Well, if you guys remember, you know, when I was 5 years old, my parents decided to, you know, get these kids, which was me and my 5 siblings, and they had remodeled the house, and one of the reasons I was sent to summer camp so early, you know, way too young to even go, was because they were remodeling the house. You know, they had to add extra bedrooms, and of course the trust fund paid for all that, because we kids came with an enormous trust fund that came with us. And so anyhow, they remodeled the house, and my sister and I had, in their farmhouse, you know, in Bellevue, my sister and I had the two upstairs rooms, and my parents had 2 rooms. They each had their own bedroom. They never stayed in the same bedroom. I've forgotten what the explanation was, something about snoring, but okay. So anyway, that was their deal. And my brothers each had a bedroom on the wing of the house. They each had a bedroom, and that lasted for, I don't think a year. And when my adopted mother thought that she would like to have kids, what she really wanted was me and maybe my sister, but the way the trust was set up, she had to take all of us, and she didn't really want them. And you remember, my oldest brother was 15, and quite frankly was very suspicious of her. He was trying to be open-minded about it, you know. For a long time he was. But my middle brother Jay and Jensen, the boys fought all the time. And one time my mother came in, and Jay had his hands around my throat and was choking me, and I'd passed out. Okay, you know, she didn't know if he was going to kill me or not. That was worrisome. And then another time, I was hiding under one of the dressers, and he was shooting at me with his pop gun. I still remember this, and shooting ping pong balls at me, and I was screaming my head off. she decided that the boys needed to go. They needed to live somewhere else. That this was all very well to take the girls, but the boys definitely had to go. Okay. So anyhow, I'm going to change the camera a little bit so my head's not showing.
Well,
I'll
you're
just-
staying at the top, and I told you not to.
Okay, well let me try to move
No. Put it back.
because I need my arm.
You
on
need
here.
your arm.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I just
Okay.
need to adjust it.
Okay.
But be aware.
Okay. Be aware. All right. So. Okay. So I'm resting my hand, you guys, on one of these bridges so I don't lose the marks on the canvas. So anyhow, but what to do with the boys? So now, Bellevue in those days was only connected by a floating bridge, and it was a good hour. My dad had at least an hour commute every day to get to the courthouse where he was a Superior Court judge. Okay? Let's see if I can do this. There. All right. And so they looked around for, places what they could do with it, and they realized that Aunt Sally could use the money. You're already shocked, right? Aunt Sally could use the money, and the house had to be close enough where she could go home at night and take care of her husband Bill in Seattle. So they rented a large house. I don't think I ever saw the upstairs in Seattle. Close enough, and then they paid Aunt Sally to be like a dorm mother for them. And they thought, well, she's raised a boy, she ought to be good at this. And so, and she needed the money. And in all fairness, my brothers loved her, all of them. She was the best thing that could have happened to them, I promise you. She was a marvelous person. And they really, really liked her. Okay? I mean, she was terrific. And she stayed with them until they went off to college and grew up, and she stayed there. And I remember my parents always had large parties. They entertained a lot. They didn't have, my mother had no friends, but they had parties because they went to parties all the time. And when you go to parties, it was explained to me, if you don't have a party yourself, no one will ask you back. If you take an invitation to someone's house, the rule of thumb is if you want to be asked back to their house, you'd better have a party and invite them. Okay? So, and that seems like a good rule, doesn't it, really? I mean, you think about it, kind of a good rule. So, Sally was never invited to any of the parties, ever. Now, my mother's sister Marie, she lived in Washington, D.C., and her husband was Adjutant General of the Air Force. Okay? And apparently some of the other family members had done well, yeah. But Sally was sort of the family failures, the way they all saw it. And Sally knew a lot of family secrets. And I remember I said, how comes Aunt Sally doesn't ever come to any of your parties, right? And Mother looked at me aghast and said, oh, she can't come. She talks too much. She knows too much. She can't come. She was afraid of what she'd say. Because you have to understand that with my parents, when they were both young, my father was a coal miner. His his oldest brother at 13 had to go to work in the coal mines in northern Michigan. Okay? And it was so, whatever happened to him in the coal mines was so terrible, he killed himself rather than go down there again. And my father didn't want to go down in the coal mines, and so the judge didn't want to go down. They were, like I said, they were like, I don't know, 6, 8 kids, and a lot of kids, and they were Welsh immigrant family. And so he got a job with the doctor and going out on his rounds with the horse and buggy. He was born in the late 1800s. He was 10 years older than my mother. And when World War II came along, he lied about his age and joined the military rather than have anything to do with that, to anything to do with coal mining. It was sort of self-preservation on his part. So back to Aunt Sally. So Aunt Sally was apparently good enough to look after my brothers, but not good enough to meet any of her friends. But they had come from, and again, I said you got to kind of appreciate this on some sense, they had come both from very poor backgrounds and were social climbers. They got the book by Emily Post on what you did and didn't do, and they had it underlined like the
Bible.
Like the Bible.
That's what my parents had.
Your parents did that too?
Oh, yeah. Got to have the Emily Post. You betcha.
And you didn't wear white after Labor Day. You couldn't be caught dead in white after Labor Day. Like, that's white outfits and stuff, white shoes or anything. And there were all these apparently very definite rules that applied to how you lived your life. And you better do that, or people would know that you just didn't have the right upbringing. And it was important to know how to eat an artichoke. In fact, it's so funny. The artichokes were so rare that I'm going to backtrack a little bit and talk about when I was living in Aspen, and I wanted to be, get into art galleries. I met this woman. Her name was Trudy Pete, and she was heir to the Ford auto fortune. She ended up dating one of the people we knew, one of our friends. And we had gone out for dinner, and this snotty lady, and she was probably about 15 years older than me, just extremely snotty, and she said we ordered artichokes, and she was surprised I knew how to eat one. But of course I knew how to eat one because Mother felt that knowing how to eat an artichoke was very important. So you guys, you might want to look that up if you haven't had one. I had one the other night for dinner, and John just was aghast. Said, "Why are you eating that thistle?" Remember that?
That's what I said.
Just last night at dinner, the other night at dinner.
Why would anybody eat that stuff?
That was my Christmas. I love them. But anyway.
That's another story.
It's another story. So, I mean, that's the kind of, and you got to understand the terms. So, Aunt Sally was never good enough to come to socialize with any of the judge's friends. Now, they were all drinkers, but they didn't use the term alcoholic in those days either. But that's another story.
No.
That's another story. It's like, it is. It's just a totally other story. So, let's see, is this dried enough to do any of this? Just to do this, I just kind of let this sit there. Aunt Sally, yeah, back to Aunt Sally. So, poor Aunt Sally. I mean, honestly, just poor Aunt Sally, yeah. So, okay, I think I can, let's see, let me just do this for a second. I'll go on. So then, fast forward, then I remember that Aunt Sally did come to my brother's weddings. She did allowed to come to those. My brothers got married. Because I don't think my mother invited any of her fancy friends. My adopted mother always referred to my brothers with that, "You're worthless brothers." I think that was almost worthless brothers was one word. That's how she referred to them. She thought they were worthless. And, anyway, Aunt Sally liked them. And so I'm in I think I'm now at Judson, and I'm in high school now. And Aunt Sally's Aunt Sally's husband's taken a turn for the worse, and he's in a nursing home, and she's visiting him every day. And my mother doesn't understand that at all. Why on earth would you visit him? She never got the loyalty thing. You know what I mean? Never quite caught that concept. That was just, that was just wasn't her thing, right? So, she actually had berated Sally for even visiting him in the hospital. She didn't understand that at all. Poor Sally. So none of that. Okay. So let's see. Let's just do this one as we're talking. Well, then, about the time, fast forward a few years later, about the time that Colby and I were married, and we'd gone up to spend the summer at my parents' house. I think it was the year after, the following year after we got married. So it was like the second, yeah, we married about a year, and we went on up to my parents' house, and we had an Airstream travel trailer, and we camped out for the month, and we, stayed with them, and Aunt Sally in the meantime had done. This often happens to people, that she was, again, living in pretty much poverty, and she somehow, and I forgot the story of how she met him, but she ran across some guy, I guess he looked her up, and he had dated her in high school before she fell in love with the big band guy. And they both had been married and widowed, and he had been madly in love with her his whole life. And guess what? He was a millionaire. Yeah, no, I mean, he was a millionaire. And so, some of my favorite stories about Aunt Sally. So they got married, and Aunt Sally suddenly had a home on the lake overlooking Lake Washington, up high, and it was a big garden, and she raised roses, and she actually did some cross whatever they do with roses to get. She got named after a rose. I mean, this is big time stuff, John. Yes and yes.
It really is.
She did. She got named after a rose, and she had a rose named after her, and she won all these shows. And I can remember Colby and I went over because her husband was a neat guy. He had worked for an oil company. He was an engineer of some kind, and he had a workshop in the basement. And Colby, of course, was very mechanical, still is. And they would go down into his basement, and they'd talk shop. And at that time, our motorhome had an air conditioner. It was a brand new. It was an Airstream. It was a brand new Airstream, and it had air conditioning, which was kind of unheard of in those days. It was a big deal for our motorhome, our air conditioning, our travel trailer, to have air conditioning. So I remember Carlton and him went down to some shipyard thing in Seattle, down by the docks, and they came up with some sort of high-tech insulation that went out by the generator, and then Carlton suggested to Colby that he save egg cartons and put them in, that thing that goes overhead in the ceiling. He muffled the air conditioner with egg cartons, and so our air conditioner was very quiet. And so they had I only tell you these stories because they had a extremely nice relationship, okay? And he was a lovely person. And, you think about a few of the stories with Aunt Sally, and I remember going over to visit her in her kitchen. You know, we went over there a lot, and the boys were downstairs and working in the basement. And one of my brothers had told me that my father, the judge, had had a bunch of affairs, that he had told him he had a bunch of affairs, and how to have an affair and be married. And it was really interesting, because that was Dennis telling me that, because I was old enough to hear these stories, right? And I was shocked, of course, because I couldn't understand how that was even, you know, that he would do it. And Aunt Sally reassured me that that would never happen, that, oh no, the judge would never have done that. He probably did, but, you know, why would she tell me that? You know what I mean? That he was still alive. She could have gotten in big trouble if it had come back that Aunt Sally said you were screwing around. I can imagine that, how that would have flown, right? So she didn't want to get on their bad side, because she was now on their good side. And so I don't know if it was true or not, but trust me, to this day, well, this day, it can't be to this day because my brother's passed away, but if he were still alive, he would tell you that he has absolute belief in that story about the affairs, okay? Yes and yes? Okay, so you can kind of get where I'm coming from on this, right?
So far.
So far. Okay, so kind of made a little goofy there, but I'll fix it. The hydroplane races were a big thing in Seattle. That's where they take these fancy boats, and they're just one driver, and they go like a bat out of hell on these, you know, and they flip over and they make huge noise, and you could hear them. You can hear the engines 20 miles away, and that's the hydroplane races in Seattle. And people would watch it on television. It's just like, you know, people watch the Super Bowl. Seattle, you know, if you came from Seattle, chances are when the hydroplane races were running, you were watching them on television, or you went down and tried to find a place at a park on the lake where you could see them. Okay, that was a big deal to see the hydroplane races. So my mother, Colby, and I are in our motorhome and our travel trailer with the car and everything. We're there, and my mother invites Sally and Uncle Carlton over for dinner. Okay, and we have a little picnic in the backyard, and she says, I'm going to invite them over so that this is the first time we met Carlton, the first time. And since then, that time, you know, Colby had become friends with him, but she had invited, you know, them over, and she said, they have a big party for the hydroplane races, and I want you to invite, you know, we're going to have Aunt Sally for dinner, and once she gets to, you know, meet your husband Colby, she might invite you to the hydroplane races. And I said, well, if we want to go to the hydroplane races, why don't we just ask her? Why are we sneaking around having parties? Why don't we just ask her? Yeah? Yes and yes? I mean, does that make sense to you? Why on earth would you sneak around like that? Because you're Lucille, and she thinks like other people. You know, nobody ever quite thought like her. So, oh no, we had to have them over for dinner and a barbecue, and then we could be safely assured that Aunt Sally would then invite us to the hydroplane races, and which she did, which I thought was funny. So then fast forward like a week later, and she comes up to me and she said, what are you wearing to the hydroplane races? And I'm going, what do you mean, what am I wearing to the hydroplane races? You know, I said, looking at her, what are you talking about? She says, well, what are you talking about? What are you wearing? I said, I don't know, blue jeans and t-shirt. Why? Kind of my standard dress for my whole life, right, you guys, right? And she goes, you can't wear that. And I said, why on earth not? She says, Aunt Sally is having the party with Carlton. We don't know who will be there. You better dress up. This was from someone who wasn't good enough to come to her house for parties. And suddenly she was worried about, and honestly, nobody important came. Blue jeans, everybody else was sitting around in blue jeans, and all my cousins, or, you know, fake cousins, or whatever these people were, and all, you know, people I'd known my whole life. And of course, you know, Colby and I were dressed up like we were going to church, you know, which was so stupid I could have killed her, right? But I mean, isn't that funny how you never forget it? Because I never forgot, you know, how she saw Aunt Sally, okay? And kind of looked down on her. And, you know, which is a shame, really, when you think about it, because the values that people have, and I think, I'm glad she did it in the sense. It's that I have never, ever judged anybody by how much money they had, or whether they went to a boarding school, or they had rich parents. I just never did. I didn't, and the fact that she did was, you know, maybe the contrast. Sometimes you learn more lessons from contrast. In other words, here's this person acting like this, and you don't like it, and so you say, you know what, I'm never doing that. That was kind of how I felt about Lucille and you know, or Punky, whatever, you know, and how she how her outlook on the world, you know, and just sort of social, you know, sort of social climbed. And it was just sort of, you know, it was interesting. And Aunt Sally, Carlton didn't live very long. He probably died a couple of years after we were there. And I don't think we ever saw them again. I never saw her again. But her son was the nicest person in the world. Still, if he's still alive, I can't remember. And I got to tell you that the money couldn't have gone, when they inherited that money, they couldn't have gone to a nicer family. If somebody ought to get money out of something, it was certainly them. You know what I mean? They still are very nice people. Now, Cousin Carolyn ended up taking care of my mother. Well, she'd visit. Well, she really didn't take care of her. When her mother was in the condo for old people, Carolyn used to come and read to her, and she spent, I don't know, years going to see her. Now, I don't fault Carolyn for that. I mean, that's what you do. I mean, they were very nice religious people, and that's what you do if you have a relative that's, you know, somewhere, and you go visit them. Don't you think, John? Isn't that what people do?
Absolutely.
So I don't fault. Everybody says, well, aren't you mad at Carolyn? No, I always liked Carolyn. And it came up in the other day in comments that she should have shared the money from the condo with you. And that was yesterday's story. She should have shared the money. And I don't even feel like she needed to do that particularly. But it was just very nice, you know. Again, it was a very nice family. And I was just, you know, I mean, I really liked them, and I liked Sally, and I even spent some time with her other sister, Marie. And apparently my mother was close to Marie because she would talk to her on the phone, but she never had any, my adopted mother, she never had any, you know, like girlfriends that she could talk to, that she talked to particularly. She just didn't. And I love tape. Just such a good thing, right? So anyway, back to Sally. And so the years that my brothers you know, were fortunate enough to have Sally in their lives, was very, they were formative teenage years. And my father would come visit them once a week. That's the judge. He would come visit them once a week for dinner. I never saw my brothers after they moved to Seattle, except for Christmas and Mother's Day and holidays and for photo ops. I know you're going, seriously? And I'm going, seriously, I never saw them. And that to me was, you know, whoops, too dark. Yeah, they, at one point my sister went to boarding school in Seattle for a year. And they went to different summer camps. And, you know, as far as I was concerned, I spent very little of my time in my whole life, ever with my brothers. You know, when my brother Jay was 16, he had a car, an MG Midget, I think, and he was driving very fast. They had just started to put seat belts in cars, and he wasn't wearing a seat belt, and he was wearing a seat belt, and he was trapped in the car, and the car caught on fire, and he was burned very badly. And my parents had never taken out, they'd never taken out good insurance on him. So most of his trust fund went to hospital bills, which is sad, you know. But on the other hand, it was a good thing for him because then he actually had to figure out how to make a living. And he's done probably better than anybody, you know. So that was my brother Jay. I know this doesn't look like much yet, but it's coming. It's coming. You gotta just trust me on this as we keep. Let's put a little contrast in and see if that doesn't help. But let's move this out of the way. Can you kind of see me right there, John? You see everything right there? You do have the camera in a funny place.
I don't have a. You're the one moving around. If you want to go back down to the bottom, I can adjust it. You put the cameras where you want it. I'll move the camera.
I'm going to put it here. Why don't you move the camera?
You're still fine. You're good.
Okay. So if I ever go through my old photos, I can dig out the Mother's Day pictures and this kind of stuff. Now my brother Jensen, the boys went to boarding school too later on, and then my brother Dennis went to college to be a lawyer because he was impressed with the judge. And what the judge, you know, he liked, the judge was a very nice, you understand, Judge Wilkins was a wonderful person. A bit of a coward, I think, as far as where my mother was concerned. But when I read the biography by Mike Reagan, who I went to school with, for Ronald Reagan's adopted son, when I read his biography and a little bit about Nancy, I think there was the times were, in those days, the woman ran the house, and whatever she said went. The man wasn't there. Whatever she said, that's how it was. Okay, so they were rarely ever. Men just avoided fights by not contradicting their wives. This is
happy wife, happy life.
And well, not only that, but the women had absolutely no power. The only power they had was in the household. They could decide what color furniture and, you know, stuff they could decide, but they weren't, you know, really didn't have any power. And And my mother seemed to have very glamorous friends. And I remember one lady came to our house and she had on the most beautiful long fingernails. And Mother just scoffed and said she never worked a day in her life, that kind of stuff, you know. She was very judgmental about people. And I mean, she was just terrible. She had opinions about everybody and let you know what they were. She was very, very concerned about certain aspects of how people lived and did things. And but as a kid, you know, you get somewhat influenced by that, but a lot of times you're just turned off by it. You're so, you know, you're just thinking that's not right. You're so wrong, you know. And it kind of reminded me when Cinnamon was 16, she turned around and said to me, you know, it's really a shame. I know so much more at 16 than you will ever know in your entire life. And I just laughed hysterically, just said, awesome. Just, in fact, it kind of brings me back to this story about, you know, when we're talking about growing up. My mother was a big advocate on cleaning your room. That was her thing. And could have been, you know, she really cared, and she really wanted the room clean. And though, in all fairness, she had a housekeeper that came in and did her part of the house every day, you know. But anyway, and those were good things that we had to learn as kids. So when Cinnamon was growing up, I didn't have a housekeeper. We lived on a ranch in California. And she, you know, again, I didn't have any kind of housekeeper. But we used to have enormous fights about a room. And big fights. I mean, like, you know, finally, one day she's a teenager, and her room's just trashed, and I just can't, I'm not cleaning it, and I want her to clean it, something like that. And she says to me, you know, Mom. I said, yeah. She says, I don't know why you get off on me, make such a big deal out of cleaning your room. You know, the fact that I was, you know, kind of raised by a woman who made a big deal out of it. You know, you do pick up habits from your parents, even when you don't want to. But I don't think that was a bad one to pick up. I'm just saying you do. And I mean, you know, you just do. So she says, I don't understand why you're making such a big deal about this. I get straight, you know, I get A's in school. I don't do drugs. I don't smoke. And she didn't at that time, which was true. She didn't do those things. I don't smoke. And she wanted to give me a whole list of things that she did that were absolutely sterling. She said, and really I should get off her case because I was being totally unfair and just let stuff go. And then I remember looking at her and saying, well, gosh, that's nice that you don't do any of those things. Here's the deal, kiddo. Your dad and I don't rob banks. We're not into wife swapping. And I listed all the things that we didn't do that were sort of criminal. And I said, so now that we've established that we're all good, we're both, you and I are both good people, please go clean your room. One of my favorite things I ever said to her. And she, of course she did. She went in and cleaned her room. But she was really it was really kind of funny because we just go around and around. But, and I think I told the story, didn't I, about the stream, right, and the clothes, right, John?
I think, yeah, that was an earlier event.
Huh?
That was on an earlier one, I believe, one of our first
Earlier
ones.
one, right, where my mother she was threatening to put my throw if I couldn't keep my room clean, she was going to put my clothes in the stream after 3 days. They were going to go in the driveway, and then they were going to go in the stream. And so there's another story in one of these other videos about what happened with that, because I have to tell you, I was probably much more of a smart alecky kid than Cinnamon was.
Yeah,
it's
I find that
amazing
so
I
hard
didn't.
to believe.
No, it was terrible. There was really a kind of, well, anyway, that's. So you have to want to happen with there. It's on one of the other videos, the miraculous things I said to her about that. So I may have to tape some more stuff before I go too far. But starting to come together, our little porch here with the stuff.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, if I may, my queen.
Sure.
Hold on, folks.
I'm looking for where I put my little white. Well, I guess, where did I put my white pencil? Okay, back over
What do you
here.
need?
I got it. I just have to find one. Okay. So, anyhow, but when you were, I think what I would say about this is that when you're raised in the, there's certain things that you're aware of when you were raised in certain time periods. Does that make sense? That how Cinnamon was raised is totally differently than how she's raising her kids. But when I think about growing up with the Judge and Punky, and in the 50s, 1950s, it was a totally different animal, as far as how people are raised today. And also, I thought that everybody kind of lived like us, because people do, everybody lives like this, and yesterday John and I were watching a show on Netflix, a new one, about the kids that were sent.
Oh my goodness.
That were sent to.
What do they call that?
To wilderness camps, if they misbehaved and starved and molested and it was just
Child abuse to the max.
child abuse to the max, and the parents got fooled by good brochures.
Oh,
And
beautiful
a
brochure.
good sales pitch. They had kids that were maybe out of control, and now when I was a kid, there was still a draft, and if a kid misbehaved, chances are what a juvenile judge would do would be to send them into the military. They would just suddenly find themselves in the military. And there was something quite wonderful about that, in that there wasn't at the time, I don't think, the war wasn't a particular war going on yet. Vietnam hadn't started. It did start shortly, but the thing that was before Vietnam, and they had a chance to grow up, be told, and learn some stuff that that would be useful in their lives, right? And then but I'm not saying I'm advocating the draft or war or any of that stuff. I'm just saying that that was what the solution, But back when this was starting, right? The kids were younger, like 15, 16, 13. They were too young for the draft on that show. They were explaining it. But just when I tell you this, I knew that when I was sent to, for instance, to boarding school in Switzerland, I absolutely knew without a doubt that if I gave them too many problems about that there was a limit to the amount of, trouble I could get in without being sent somewhere else. There's always a worse place. You know what I'm saying? There's always a worse place. So, even through all the boarding schools and everything, you just know. So this painting is taking longer than the Aunt Sally story. So, which was a good one though. You got to admit, a good story, right, for Aunt Sally? I mean, everybody loved Aunt Sally. My brothers, everybody. So back then, when I was living with my parents and stuff like that, we did a lot of skiing, and we'd go up on with the school. The public school actually had a ski program, and you'd take the bus and the school bus, and you would go like junior high. You would go skiing, okay? And we did go to some ski camps too, but we also went on this bus and with the kids. And this is how I met Frank Radford. And I back, if my sister was a shoe horse, and then she loved shoes more than anything, and she had a lot of clothes, I was very enamored with nice clothes. I didn't have a lot, but I wanted nice clothes. Not shoes, didn't care about shoes, but I did want nice clothes. And so my sister, like I say, she didn't care that much, but I did. Wonder why I can't get this paint to stick on here. And that's what happens when you paint outside the lines. So I first met Frank Radford, and he was 16. And charming and very nice. And for some reason, even though I was a lot younger than him, I think I was in the 9th grade, would have been about 15. Yeah, 14, 15, maybe 14. It's a lot. Anyway, he was a lot older than me. So that February, he wanted to. He says, He called me up, and my sister and I had our own phone, but it was just a dial phone. It wasn't in our rooms, and if we wanted to, that's a whole other thing about the phone. But we had our own phone. So, and my parents had a phone. That was a totally different number, which was a good thing. So he called me up, and he said he wanted to give me some roses for Valentine's Day. Talk about Aunt Sally's roses. These are now Ginger's roses. And what did I want? And what I wanted was a dozen roses, red roses, and I thought that would fix my sister. So wait till I show her, he'll give me a dozen roses. It'll be great, right? But the problem was I didn't want to seem greedy, so I said, I just want one rose. And he drove up, and he had a Carmen Ghia car, and he drove up to the house in his little sports car. And his family was extremely wealthy. Apparently, my parents knew him, their family. I'd never, not enough where I'd ever met him, but, and his family was so wealthy that he had to actually dress up in a suit and tie for dinner. I think that's kind of wealthy, don't you, John?
That's, yeah. I didn't know how to do that.
I mean, the King of England and that group does it, but I didn't know any real people that thought
nobody really does that. But
was a good idea, except for his family, right? I'm thinking, God, they do what? You do what? You have to do what? And so anyway, but that Valentine's Day, that particular Valentine's Day, he came by with the roses, and somehow my dad got wind that there was a guy at the house, right? He got wind of this. So he's discovered, he met Frank and found out how old he was and everything like that, and found that just slightly disturbing. And
how old was he?
Well, he was like going on 16, 17.
And how old were you?
And I was like 14 maybe.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, the parents weren't wrong that, I was too young to date him, yes? I mean,
One would think.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying they were wrong. I'm just saying that, they were kind of adamant. I couldn't, and so my mother called up his mother, which is one of those mortifying things when your mother calls somebody else's mom and complains, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know that one? So they basically told him that he could come back when I was older. If he was still interested when I was older, he was more than welcome to come back. But he was my, kind of my first high school boyfriend. Some others, but he was my first high school boyfriend. And then later, when we got together later, when I was a senior, junior in high school, when I was heading down to Judson, where I remember I told you guys, I think I told about Judson skipping a grade, right?
Yeah.
I'd come back from Switzerland, and we hooked up again. And he was, and my mother remembered him, and I can remember just some, how you just kind of think back to when you're dating, right? So she's, I think we were going to see, Irma LaDouce, okay? So my mother's in the living room. You always have to meet the dates, right? Okay? And she says, you guys are going to go see what movie? And I think he told her, and she goes, well, that's about a prostitute. You do know what a prostitute is, don't you, Frank Darling? I never heard calling him that, Frank Darling. And I could have just died, right? And just saying shit like that, right? Because
my darling.
I didn't really know. I mean, and honestly, I didn't know it was about a prostitute, particularly even after I saw the movie. It wasn't really clear to me at that age what it was, right? I didn't know. But Mother knew. And anyway, that was one of her, just these small things that you kind of remember. And I think it was she that told him, I think she was the one that said something about what time are you going to come back? Yeah, I think it was him. She said, what time are you going to come back? And we had just started dating. She says, what time are you going to come back? And I said, I don't know, about 11 o'clock, I guess, movie's over, and we'll come back about 11. And she says, go ahead and stay out till 12. I know you kids like to go park. Now, that, we hadn't really reconnected since wait till she's older routine, right? And the fact that she would say that was really upsetting to me at the time. And I remember saying to her, Mother, we don't park, we go to motels, and then walking out. Of course, he's sitting there trying to understand the dynamics between these two women, right?
Oh, I feel sorry for him.
Well, and she'd already brought him into the house to see if he'd had dinner and tried to feed him turkey leg, and you know what I mean, like nobody fed him at his house. I mean, it was bizarre, right? Bizarre, that's a French word, bizarre, right? And it was très bizarre what she was doing. Oh my Lord, it was bizarre. So, yeah.
That's funny.
It was kind of funny. And, well, we corresponded, and oh, Frank was an alcoholic. Did I mention that?
No, you didn't mention that.
He was an alcoholic at that age, even an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic, and whatever went on at his house, okay, whatever went on there, I never met his parents, but besides having to rent for dinner, they didn't, he didn't own a pair of blue jeans, which I thought was shocking. So I remember we had to buy him some blue jeans, and then I drug him behind my horse, and we got them all dirty, and so they looked like they weren't new, right? So no one would suspect that he didn't actually have a pair of new jeans, you know. So we did stuff like that, but I mean, he really, honestly. So I was dating some other people at the same time I was dating. He wasn't the only boy I was dating that summer before I went off to school, but he was a sweetheart. And okay, we're still good, still going here. Good. I know this is taking a little longer than I thought to paint, but I hope you guys don't mind.
I don't mind.
You know, how long have I been at this? You?
Just an hour.
Okay, I'm all right.
Yeah.
I always feel like I'm taking too long. So anyhow, so Frank and I kept in touch, and we went out a few times. We went and did things, and I think and then his parents sent him away for a while, and then he went off to college, and I went to Judson boarding school, but we wrote. And the first time I ever sent him, I sent him a letter, and I had it sort of stuffed in. John has this thing. I don't know, was it a guy's thing? I don't know, you guys. You think it's a guy thing or whatever. But John has this thing about badly folded mail.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
He can't stand it. If you get anything, and you just fold it, except for the absolutely perfect, then he's wildly upset. You know what I mean? And Frank, of course, Frank was so funny because he sent me thanked me for the letter. And then he sent me a blank sheet of paper with little dots going across it. Like, I got to show you because you're going to think it's funny. But so I clean this off because I got to show you guys. It's funny, right? If I can remember what he did. So he sends me this letter, this thing on how to fold a letter and not have it all wrinkly in an envelope, because as many times as you got to mean, I've been writing letters since I was 5 years old and stuffing them in envelopes, right? I wasn't new to letter writing, okay?
Well, the way you folded it, yes, you were.
Just I wasn't.
I think it's quite obvious.
But for people like John and Frank, apparently how I fold letters is distressing, right? In fact, I've had people, when we've been wrapping Christmas gifts and stuff, I've had people actually take the Scotch tape away from me and say, "Here, I'll do it." You know, or go back up. I'll do it. Just you don't do anything. So he had this, you know, he said he had the paper like this, and then he had like these, step one, and then whatever the next step was, and I don't know how the whole thing went, but he did it like that, and he put it in the envelope so I'd understand. He says, "This is how you fold a letter." By the way, just
And see, right here, I can tell you have it wrong.
So it was so cute because it was so funny because our only interaction really with dating had been to see movies and drink Mogan David wine on dates. I mean, that's really kind of what our whole dating activity was. As shocking as that is, right? That's what it consisted of. So anyhow, anyway, his parents had offered him a brand new sports car and a trip to Europe for 6 months if he would stop drinking. And he never did, and he died. He died. He didn't make it through his first year of college. He was such a serious alcoholic.
That is a really...
Yeah. So that was kind of a thing for me too. You know what I mean? I mean, I liked Frank. I mean, I don't think we would have ever gotten married or anything. His family, because trust me, if we'd gone to his family, if I thought my family was a problem, his family was such a problem that he had to drink himself to death, right? Because they were so horrible. Wealthy, but horrible. I think there's some sort of mystery that if you're really rich and everybody lives a happy lives. I'll tell you what, one of the things that my mother did, because she was a big fan of psychiatrists, was that when my sister and I, when she adopted us, she sent my sister and I both to therapy. Because, we'd had a pretty rough go of it with with our parents dying and stuff like that. So, and that was all the rage, therapy in those days. Everybody went to some sort of therapy. That's what you did, okay? And so my sister refused to go. And I have to tell you guys that I'm glad I did go, in that I'm glad I went because my sister was an alcoholic. She never learned how to deal with the stress, and somehow, in spite of this weird relationship I had with this therapist, I had somebody I could tell about my life. Okay? Had somebody I could tell about what was happening in my life. And that was very important. Yeah? And my sister never did. And so she never really, so she used alcohol to cope with her problems. And I was always very sorry about that. Is that, that was her, kind of her solution. And alcohol kind of ran in our family anyway, as far as the alcoholism. We were more susceptible to that. My adopted my adopted parents drank. That's what people did back then. It was a time, and and alcoholism was never talked about. Somebody had a nervous breakdown, but they weren't, drinkers. So this was the kind of thing where, I know it's taking a while for this picture, but it's fun to see it come together, right? So I'm just. So where are we going with? So anyway, so Frank, unfortunately, Frank did, but I did learn how to fold a letter sort of from him. I don't know that I continued to do it, but I did learn how to do it. Does that make sense?
Well, kinda.
But I mean, you should see John now, even today, you know, if you just get any kind of piece of mail or anything, he hands it to you. And if he says, hold on to this, and if you crease, bend, and God knows what he'd do with a map. Thank God we don't use maps anymore. I think he'd go ballistic, you know? Just, a
Yes, I
map? Don't
do.
give her a map. No, no, don't give her a map. Oh, no. She can't have a map. Oh, God, did you see what she did with the bill from the water company? Don't give her a map. Just, sorry, John, but, you know, you are very funny. I think you're funny, you know, myself, but that's all right. I'm not criticizing him, just observation. Everybody does things different. And sadly, Cinnamon's dad was the same way, you know. He would fold towels like we were folding the American flag, you know what I mean, or long pieces of stuff. It was his time in the military, but you thought we were folding a flag the way he wanted to see towels are long, you know, like long pieces of fabric or whatever we had going there. I know this is a little confusing, but I'll just, as you're looking at this, but I was just never much of it attempted to drink. My sister drank, and my oldest brother was an alcoholic, and my brother Jensen was an alcoholic. And my brother Jay and I weren't drinkers. Could have been, but I'd had some experiences with that, and I don't know if that's done another story in college, or I discovered that perhaps drinking was not my best solution to life. So occasionally I'll have a drink or something, but now if you're on any kind of medication, you're not supposed to drink. Anyhow, but John and I get, you know, free alcohol on the cruise ships, and we just usually and we're not soda people either, which is really funny. You know, we don't drink sodas. You know, that was the one thing I'm glad I was happy about with Lucille and our growing up, was that they didn't believe in sodas, and they were never in the house. I didn't like them anyway, but it wouldn't have mattered if I had, because she wasn't going to buy them. If we went out, for instance, shopping, she might have a Coke float, which is a Coke with some ice cream. You know, she might have that, but she never. But the soda was not one of the. You know, we had orange juice in the morning, fresh orange juice that we had to drink, and first thing in the morning, and my stomach was really not up for it. The first thing to put in my stomach is a little acidic. But she was very insistent on the orange juice, drinking the orange juice. And honestly, they never were sick. I never saw them sick. They never got sick. I mean, Dad lived to be 99, and they never got colds or anything. And they had that fresh orange juice with half a grapefruit every morning, and they did not get sick. So, you know, that just says something, doesn't it? Yeah?
Gotta mean something.
They just starting to come together now a little bit. We're seeing a little bit more of the picture than we were before. Maybe if I paint the chair in, or maybe I'll paint this in. I don't know, what should I paint in? Hard to decide, isn't it? So many things to paint. Hard to know where you want to go with this, but I don't know.
Lots of choices.
Lots of choices, yeah, just so many choices. Just want to come straight down here with this one. do that. That kind of. Okay, so let's put the fence posts in. But it's just like we were. I talked about the other day. I talked about how I quit smoking because cigarettes had gone up to $3 a carton, and one of my friends who still smokes, I said, well, what are cigarettes now? And she said $80 a carton.
I can't even believe that.
Well, no.
You're just lighting your money on fire.
Yeah, no.
Besides killing yourself.
It's really hard to believe, and it just is. But I got a kick out of Cinnamon when she was little because she was a very precocious child. And I remember one time, her dad and I were, and it's another story, but it was during the gas shortage. And back the first one, where you could fill up your car every other day. Remember that? If you had, depending on your license plate number, when you traveled. And we had just gotten this brand new GMC motorhome, which is another story about how we got that. But we just had gotten that. And we were in Florida and gassing up, and we're in this gas station, and Cinnamon, bless her heart, she goes up to this guy that's smoking. She's 3 years old. And she says, I see that you smoke. And he's looking at her, and he goes, yeah, just wondering where this is going to go. And she said, I myself don't smoke. Okay, now she's 3, so no shit, right? But I myself don't smoke. She said, that's going to kill you, right?
Cute kid.
She says, it's going to kill you. I really am very puzzled why you do it. And then she walked off. And I know, you guys, that's just kind of funny. But she was one of these kids that was, if she thought it, she said it. Now, Cinnamon's father was some of the first people ever to take up hang gliding when they first came out. And we lived in Aspen, and in the summertime they had roads that, they had to have maintenance roads to get up to the top of the mountain to fix the, to load the, to do all the work on the lodges that are up there and to take care of the chairlifts. So there were these dirt roads you could ride, and we used to ride our motorcycles up them all the time, up to the top of the mountain. And then once we got up there, we could then, continue on into the backcountry, okay? But when it came to hang gliding, there was, the best place to hang glide was up on top of Aspen Mountain. Okay, and that was the ideal place to want to try and hang glide. Was up there, right?
Sure, that makes sense.
So, but you had to get up there. So, and obviously you couldn't carry your hang glider up on even if you could carry it up on a motorcycle, you had to get your motorcycle back. So what he needed was a car, an old car like a truck that would get up there, okay? That's what he needed, a car. And then he needed someone that would drive it up to the top of the mountain, right? Makes sense, doesn't it? You need some passy to drive you up there. Now, it wasn't just Colby. There was a whole group of these guys that were hang gliding in Aspen back in those days. And so Colby, if you guys remember that Cinnamon had a little friend in school whose name was John Paul. And Paul's dad was a gardener. And so what Colby proposed to him, that's Cinnamon's dad, Colby, was that they buy this old truck, $50 each. I mean, that's how long ago you could buy an old truck for $50. Isn't that incredible? And it was old. I mean, it looked like something out of a movie for old trucks, you know? It was that old. That was old, man. So, anyhow, they bought the truck. And then they thought, wouldn't it be nice if Ginger would drive them up every afternoon so they could jump off Aspen Mountain and fly back down.
Oh, I think that'd be lovely.
And I wasn't having it. I've never been a groupie. I'm not a groupie that goes and just watches other people do things. If somebody does, I'm going to do it. I'm not watching it. You know, I'm not much of a spectator, okay? And certainly not a groupie spectator. I say that with total disgust. No, do not feel like I could be a groupie spectator, okay? So anyway, they were always looking for someone to drive the truck because the guys all had girlfriends, and there was 5 of them with their hang gliders, and they would ride in the back of the truck, and Colby would drive it up, and then usually with the driver who was going to take it back down, and then the driver would then take it back down and pick them up in a local field, not too far, you know, kind of outside. They would land in this field just slightly outside of town is how they, you know, how they worked that, okay? So Cinnamon, she was just a little kid. She was that 3-year-old, right? She wanted to go with. She wanted to ride up the hill with the truck. And so there was this one time there's this one girl, and they had talked her into going and doing the truck thing, okay? And so they're riding up the hill, and Cinnamon's got a captive audience now because she's sitting, there's no seat belts or anything, and they're going up this truck up the mountain and back, and she's got this lady that's, you know, she's probably in her 20s, and Cinnamon, if nothing, was, you know, loved captive audiences like that. So she says to the lady, she said, you know, I've learned something very important. And of course the ladies are going, really? What's that? Trying to be nice to the little kid. And she says, I have something that just absolutely blew my mind. She says, I barely understand it myself. And the lady says, what's that? And Cinnamon says, God didn't have a beginning. And he doesn't have an end. And I might not have an end either. Doesn't that blow you away? And of course, they're having this religious discussion in the truck, and this lady doesn't know what to make of Cinnamon. She's always saying stuff like that. And I mean, it was very funny, since I remember that she didn't do the truck too much. It was scary coming down that mountain in that old truck. The brakes were hardly any good. It was barely okay for landscaping. And the whole thing ended when there was just a core group of people in the country that were hang gliding. Colby was in on the ground floor of that. In fact, he made his own hang gliders. Okay? So, there was probably, and you knew about, they all knew about each other. So, there was this father that came out to, and everybody knew, and the word was out, okay? The word was out that Aspen, Colorado was the place to fly hang gliders in the summertime. They had wonderful updrafts, which allowed the hang glider to glide, right? And they could spend a long time in the air before they had to land, okay? So, I mean, that was important for them to be able, oh, how did I get this green, okay? To be able to have, you know, so anyway, the word was out that Aspen was the place to be, kind of like Green Acres, Aspen was the place to be if you were into, you know, flying hang gliders, okay? So, let's see, I think I need this color over here. It's hard to paint a white chair sometimes, but we'll just keep doing it. So, there was this father that came out, he was divorced, and he built hang gliders in California. He made national news with his hang gliders, and he was a big deal. And he came out with his son, and you know, of course, he met with Colby and the locals. Okay, and his aspiration, of course, was to you know, fly hang gliders on Aspen Mountain. But one of the, you know, they didn't fly every day, and the reason they didn't was because hang gliding is very susceptible to weather. All right, so if the wind's the wrong direction, or if the weather's, you know, you didn't have a lot of good days to fly. Okay, you just didn't. If you didn't have good weather, you weren't flying. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So they didn't always fly, and then sometimes when they'd get up on the mountain, after they got up there, they had these wind gauges. And it was a little bubble that it looked like a thermometer, and you'd hold it up in the air, okay? And if the bubble, it showed which way the wind was blowing, and the wind had to be blowing towards you, and had to have enough speed. It had to be at so many miles per hour, had to be blowing in a certain direction, and you had to catch the updraft, and there was quite a thing to it, okay? And so they, this guy had come out with his 14-year-old son. Cinnamon had gone up with him, and ridden up the truck. With the driver and Colby and the gang. They'd all gone up there, but then they had decided that it was too dangerous and that they weren't going to do it. Okay?
Smart move.
It was just too dangerous, and they weren't. It wasn't good flying condition. Well, the guy had brought his son out from California, who was, you know, the youngest hang glider person ever. Now, why anybody would let their, you know, 12 or 14-year-old son jump off a cliff in a hang glider is beyond me. You know, I think the whole thing was crazy. Yeah. Yes and yes.
Well, you would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought the whole thing was crazy. I tried it one time. We had gone down to Mexico. And when Colby was learning to fly a hang glider, we had gone down to Mexico, to Ensenadas in Mexico, down to a kind of a sand beach. And it just was sand dunes. So you jumped off, and it wasn't very far. It was like you jumped off the sand dune when he was first learning how to fly. You jumped off the sand dunes, and then you learned how to land and stuff, right? And I did try it. Okay, I want you to know I did try it, because you know, on some level it looked kind of fun, yeah. Okay, so I tried it, and the problem I had with it was that it was a little bit like being in a swing and someone cutting the rope. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, pretty much what it is.
And I didn't like it. So I said, thanks, but no thanks. Okay? Thanks, friends, but no thanks. Okay? Not interested in doing that. So, anyway, Colby stuck with it because, quite frankly, he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And I think I'll just paint this all blue and then put the white over it. It's too hard to keep it. It's just sometimes it's easier to just paint the back layer. And at one point, I almost thought about putting this window in first and all of this, and then putting in the chair afterwards. Okay. But I have to do that first. Okay. So good. We just have to know what we're doing there. Okay. So anyway, so this, back to these kids, you know, this dad, and so they're all up on top of the mountain, and this guy's this big hotshot hang glider and he actually, Colby made his hang glider, but people bought them, you know, from this guy, and this guy was like big in hang glider news and all that stuff. And so the guy said, you know, I'm sorry, you came a long ways, and maybe tomorrow, but we're not going to jump today. The wind's not right, and it's too dangerous. And so the guy was pissed. He was just really angry. And he goes, well, you guys, you don't know anything. You know, that's your deal. You don't know anything. I know all about hang gliding. My son's like the best there is. And, you know, you may be chicken, but we're going to go.
Who said that?
The guy brought the kid. You guys may be chicken, but my son can go. He wasn't going, man. He was just going to throw his son off the cliff. My son can go. And you can't. If you're too chicken, that's just your problem, right? Basically, that's what he said. If you're too chicken, that's just your problem.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the other guys, said, look, man, we're telling you, we know these mountains and the winds. We live here, and we promise you this is a really, really bad idea. Just don't do it. So he did, and not only he did, but he didn't go down, he didn't jump off the same place that they always jumped off. He decided he liked this other place better, which they told him for sure he shouldn't do, and he jumped off there. And you're going, surely not. Well, oh yeah, he did, right? So then, I know this is so scary, isn't it? His son jumps off, gets caught in a down current, downdraft, okay, and slams into the mountain and dies.
I would think so.
And Cinnamon watched the whole thing, him slamming into the mountain. She's like, little. And I just, even to this day, this kind of behavior still puzzles me, why anybody would do that. But and I'm thinking, he had his children on, the other boy hadn't come, and I said, good luck trying to get any more kids to come with you. Just, you're not coming again, right? That kind of stuff. But anyway, that was the story with him, was that his child died. So that kind of, and honestly, the people that some years later we would go and, Colby liked to fly, so some years we would go down to Southern California to, And there was a place in La Jolla where you could, the guys would jump off and then land on the beach, and then you'd have to, well, you were supposed to land back on the beach. It was like a many 100-foot cliff down to the water. And Colby, you know, would, we went, I remember we took our motorhome down there and spent the summer, or the winter, in Aspen. We spent the summer in Aspen, and then when winter came, we rented out our condo, and we went down to Southern California that year. Cinnamon wasn't in school yet. It was just before she started first grade, or kindergarten rather. And we went down to Southern California, and Colby flew hang gliders off the cliff, and then he wasn't good enough. That sounds terrible, but he wasn't good enough to land back up on the cliff. And it wasn't like a road to get down there. It was a mountain goat trail to get down to the beach down at that cliff. And he would then want help carrying his hang glider back up. So I would have to quit what I was doing and help him carry this, because you had 2 people to carry the hang glider back up. I wasn't a big fan of this. I didn't like trucks, and I sure didn't want to carry the hang glider back up, but you know, that was something I got stuck with, was hang gliders. And after we divorced, Cinnamon was 16, Colby went back to flying hang gliders again for a while. But most of the people that we knew down at that California that were doing that, most of the people we knew had died. You know, had crashed their plane. It killed them. It is a dangerous sport. It just is. I don't know.
So you don't want me to take it up?
No. But I remember there was this. We had this lady that we had met, in California. She was from Bulgaria, I think. And her husband, who was an office worker of some kind, sold insurance and probably had never stepped off a gravel road in his life. One of those people, right?
Ooh.
He was fascinated with the fact that Colby flew hang gliders. He just thought that was wonderful, and he thought maybe he would like to try hang gliding. Okay. So, and they talked every time we visited. We'd go out to dinner with them. So they were a lovely couple. Every time we talked, they were talking about how he could get this hang glider, and what fun they would have, and they'd go places and fly hang gliders, and wasn't that neat? And I remember Eva was probably in her mid-50s. Her husband was in his 50s. Colby was probably 36 at that time. You know, it's a big difference between somebody 36 flying a hang glider, and he was the old man in the group. Then being 56 or whatever her husband was, he was still working, but he was still, So I remember saying to Eva, because I couldn't believe that that Colby would even promote this guy. Was no more than an athlete. It was just, and having that man jump off a cliff was just the craziest thing I ever heard of. I mean, I just couldn't believe, but Colby liked to talk to people, and he was willing to talk to him about his hang glider. So, Colby just proceeded like the guy was going to get one. Okay. And I remember saying to Eva, with her accent, I said, "Oh my God, Eva, are you not concerned that that your husband is going to go get a hang glider?" And Eva just laughed at me, and she says, "No," she says, "no," she says, "I don't worry about that stuff. I don't worry." I loved her accent. She says, "No, Eva doesn't worry about, him getting a hang glider." And I says, "Well, my gosh, they've been talking about it for quite a long time. Why aren't you worried?" And she says, Well, she says, I tell you, Ginger, I tell you, I don't worry. And I said, okay. And I said, and why is that? And she goes, because Eva doesn't want no hang glider. And what Eva doesn't want, Eva doesn't get. I love that. But Eva doesn't want, Eva doesn't get, right? That was the bottom line, man. Eva doesn't want a hang glider, so it didn't matter. He could talk all he wanted, but there was never going to be
No hang glider coming
there
to
was
this
never
household.
going to be a hang glider coming into their lives, ever, ever. So, you know, those are the kind of the fun. To me, those are the funny moments in life when. You know, you meet, you know, just kind of the funny things. But let's see there. See, and as we were, but he didn't. Once Cinnamon was in school and we actually moved down to Southern California, he flew his hang glider, but he decided to put an engine on it,
Well, yeah.
like a chainsaw engine. He thought it would be better. It was fun running off of cliffs and stuff, but then you had to have the right wind. Okay?
So he's going to make his own wind.
So he thought if he made his own wind, because the genesis, I mean, it was interesting how these kinds of things happen, isn't it? Because back when we were living in Aspen, you know, when we had the truck and stuff, when the days weren't good, the guys had gotten an idea that going to Grand Junction, Colorado, which was about 3 hours from Aspen, would be an idea. They had some big cliffs over there. We just remember that, like, Grand Junction is like a valley kind of thing, and they had some, you know, kind of giant cliffs. And, you know, I don't even know how you got on top of them, but they talked about what they would do is they'd take our motorhome, these guys and Colby, and me and Cinnamon. And apparently, when they did stuff like that, I would paint. Whenever we took the motorhome anywhere, I would go with them, but I would paint. Okay. So I've been painting a long time, you guys. And so anyway, they had gone down to Grand Junction, Colorado, and they were camping out. And they were staying in our. We had tents with us, but they were staying. You know, I was cooking, and they were, you know, sleeping in the sleeping in tents, but eating with us, and they were waiting for the. They'd go out in the mornings, and they would. I think we stayed a couple nights, or maybe 1 or 2 nights. We stayed, and we waited for the wind to be right, standing there out there with their wind gauges, and they were waiting for the wind to be just right, so they could. You know, fly their hang glider. Okay? That was their plan. Wind had to be just right, and then they could fly it. Okay? I'm just trying to think about this when I'm telling you the story. So we had a television, but in the motorhome, we had a television, but the reception wasn't very good. Okay? So we were watching a movie. We got some sort of a weird movie. We were watching this movie, and it was about aliens that were taking over the planet. Okay? And everybody in the movie, have you ever watched those movies? Everybody in the movie did the wrong thing. They all did the wrong, you know, and you know, you're yelling at the movie, and it was kind of creepy, right? But, you know, we were all watching it saying, God, these people are so stupid. Why would anybody do this? This is so stupid, right? Stupid. You know, you watched a movie like that, and everybody's doing this stupid stuff, and you're going, what are you doing, kind of thing? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
And so anyhow, some point I'm going to have to dry this, but I'm just trying to get all this in where I can. So then it was a bust. They never were able to fly off that mountain. That just, you know, they tried for a couple days and the windsocks were never right. So we gave up and we headed back, and it was late at night. We weren't going to spend another night there. We're just going to get back to Aspen and do our own beds. Yes? That was the big plan. Yes and yes?
Sounds like a good plan.
So, let's see. Our motorhome had 2 captain's chairs, and I was sitting in the at the dinette, and I was looking out at the window, kind of staring out at the window, and the guys were all, hanging out and talking. And as I'm watching it, one of the things I used to do, you always wonder, but how's an artist? One of my favorite things to do, really, was to, I'm going to have to dry this and then I'll tell you what it was and about the aliens.
Aliens?
Because I'm going to tell you about how we met the aliens, the real ones. Time to change water, I think.
You have 2 of them down there.
I'm going to just move stuff down, change my water. I have 2 waters now. When I need clean water, I can just get the other bucket, which is very handy when you need clean water. If you're doing whites, somebody sent me a person in for personal art coaching, and their brush had gotten dirty, and one of the hands looked a little gray, and it wasn't. Yeah, it was pretty gray. It just almost wartime for this person, right? Not the artist, but the painting looked like the person in the painting might have died. Okay, and that's because it's very easy to have that happen if your brush is, if your brush gets dirty and you don't use clean water. It's really easy to have that happen. Okay. So anyway, back to the aliens. You want to know what happened with the aliens? So we're just, and one of the things I started to tell you is one of the things that I have always done is when I'm looking out the window, I always think, how would I paint that? How would I paint that? How would I paint that? I've done that for years. Okay, and so I was looking at the landscapes because this was going up the canyons from Grand Junction. It was just a 2-lane highway, and very sparse, and just sagebrush, no houses, anything like that, just total country. And so as we're driving up the, I'm looking, and then over the hill, I'm noticing that there's a moon, and it's and I'm thinking, I wonder how I'd paint that moon, and it was over kind of top it over the mountains, and I'm watching this for the longest time, and it's very interesting because there's just nothing out there but desert, and I'm just totally engrossed in this moon, and all of that, right, and and then I looked out and it's starting to move in a very irregular pattern. The moon, you know what I mean? Because moons just don't. Usually they just stay there. They just don't take off and do their own moon thing, right? They just, if you got a moon, you can pretty much count on. There's your moon. It's not going anywhere, right? That's where it is in the sky. It might as time goes on in the evening, it might move, but for the most part, your moon isn't going to be moving, right? But this moon was kind of moving. And then I looked, I know you guys, and then I looked out the other window and I see the other moon. And then I look back and say, well, wait a minute, there can't be two moons. What do you mean the other moon, right? So I suddenly realized that I'm not looking at a moon at all. I'm looking at a large white object about the size of the moon, and it's moving. I know. I'm telling you guys, I know, right? It's moving. And I couldn't believe it. The thing's moving. And so I stop, and then I'm just realizing what has happened, yes? I stop and alert the others. I said, hey, you guys, look out. I said, stop, Colby, I said, stop the motorhome. Stop it, stop the motorhome. I see this moon. And it's not a moon. It's some sort of something else, and it's moving. So then everybody turns around and looks out the window and sees exactly what I'm seeing. Is there's this white object, and it's the size of the moon, and it's darting about. Not fast, but it's definitely moving. So I know you're going, surely not. I'm going, oh yeah, that's what it was doing, right? So I said, stop the car, stop the motorhome, let's take a look. And then remember, we all saw that scary movie the night before, where only stupid people stopped and went and looked. Remember that? We'd all been yelling at the dumb people the day before for, can you believe anybody was, why would you stop and look? Obviously, it's not from here, right? So there was quite an argument over whether we should stop the car. Colby kind of wanted to stop it and see it, right? Because obviously, it wasn't a flying, so it was the shape of a moon, right? And we didn't stop. We kept going. We never stopped. We tracked it until it got out of sight. And then like I say, we never ever stopped. I'm gonna let the chair sit and dry so I can finish it. In the meantime, we'll do the flowers. So that was so funny. So the very next day, I'm looking in the papers. I'm looking to see if anything like this has shown up in the on television or in the newspapers. And because surely somebody would have reported that, yeah? And nothing. There is nothing. And when I mean nothing, and so then when the guys came by, or we were talking to them, or called them up, and I wanted to talk about what we'd seen, they hadn't seen anything and they didn't know what I was talking about. Nobody wanted to talk about the fact that we'd seen this. I mean, nobody. They didn't want me to call the paper. Everybody wanted to drop it. They were so scared, and nobody would talk about it. Honestly, I promise you. And so Cinnamon was asleep, so she didn't get to see it. And I wouldn't have woken her up for that anyway. Try not to scare the kids. One time when she was a little older, I had not obeyed that rule about not scaring the kids. And she was staying with her grandmother, Betty, in Lake Havasu City. And up until that time, we were down there for a visit. And she was spending the night, and I think we were going to California to check out where we were going to live in California when we decided to move out of Aspen. We sold our house in Aspen without any place to live in California. I mean,
Always
how
wise
crazy.
to do.
Just, we had no idea where we were going to live, honestly. No clue. Okay? So, oh yeah, so Cinnamon, so Colby and I, before we moved, we'd gone to see the movie Jaws, and we couldn't get a babysitter. So,
So you took Cinnamon.
as a bad mother, we took Cinnamon, and in the scary parts, you know, with the movie going dun 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 dun, I just put my hands over her eyes so she wouldn't have to see it, right? Well, that was not the thing to do because she was terrified, and when she's just like, you know, going into, just getting out of kindergarten, right? That was the age. I know you guys are all horrified. I'm a terrible parent, and I'd be the first one to admit it. And when she went to stay with her grandmother, at night she wouldn't walk on the blue carpet. She kept jumping from the furniture to furniture, on the chairs to the couch to get to the bathroom. She refused to touch the blue carpet in the living room. She wouldn't walk on it, bare feet. And her grandmother couldn't understand. Besides not eating anything her grandmother cooked, because she said, only my mother knows how to cook, and you're a terrible cook, my father says so. Stuff like that, right? Just, everybody in the family knows that cooking isn't your skill, Grandma. Stuff like that, right? Just didn't like anything. And, you know, Betty was old at that time. I mean, Betty was, you know, she had her kids late, and we had our kid 5 years after we were married. You know, let's just say that, you know, she was older, and we'll talk about her in another story, but anyway, that was really funny. When Cinnamon finally explained to her the reason that she was not willing to walk on the blue carpet, because she had been taken to see the movie Jaws, she was mad at us. She goes, I can't believe you guys did that. What is wrong with you? Are you people crazy? And just nobody, who does that, right? Apparently we did it. Just we did it. But it was kind of, who does that, right? And so anyway, poor Cinnamon. Like I say, we were not, oh, I did this wrong. Okay, I can fix it. I did it wrong. I know how to fix it. I know where the white paint is. Don't you love it when you do something wrong and you have to fix it? I had somebody write me, today, and make a comment, I think yesterday on yesterday's video, and said that, that she was new to painting, and she understood patience was important, and of course that's so true, and that she had thrown a bunch of paintings out that were just not good, and you don't have to throw them out. And I want to encourage anyway, you can paint over them. You can. That's the nice thing about acrylic. Watercolors, you have to pretty much throw out. If you make a mistake, and you gotta throw them out. I think I'll just put this back in. Since it's easier to do it like that than to save the line. So, where did I put that white paint? Put it oh, here. So anyhow, yeah, so where were we going with all this, with the grandmother and she wouldn't want to walk on the blue carpet, which I thought was really kind of funny, but here, let's just redo this. That's the nice thing about acrylics, that you really can compensate for any kind of mistakes you make. Let's put a little bit of something warm in that white. But when we moved to California, and we had our house in California, when we moved there, Colby was, I think we were talking about, Colby was doing his, he was now into motorized hang gliders. He had progressed. He had progressed in doing that, and that's what he was doing with the hang glider. So he had this. He was one of the first people to ever do it too. If not, I'm not saying he was the first, but he was darn near close to the first. And Colby's, in the history of his family, he had, about the time of the Wright brothers, he grew up in Rawlins, Wyoming. At the time of the Wright brothers, he had a relative that had actually, constructed some sort of airplane and flew off into the distance and was never heard from again. I mean, who gets stories like that, right? Kind of interesting, don't you think?
So nobody ever tracked him
No,
down?
never found him out in the Red Desert of Wyoming. He just disappeared. He might have beat the Wright brothers to the airplane thing if he'd lived. Conversely, I know we get distracted sometimes with all these weird stories, but then it reminds me of something else, right? One story reminds you of another, right? So when I had a good friend that came from Bulgaria, and she immigrated here after 1990. The wall, I don't think, had come down yet, and it hadn't. And so she had, Lakewood Church had sponsored a bunch of people here in Houston, from the, in Russia and different communist countries, and brought them. They did a lot, they did a lot for, just letting other people from other, they had to send them back, but they got to see how the rest of the world, kind of lives. And back then when there were, bread lines and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, Dee Dee came over from Bulgaria, and she used to tell me stories about Bulgaria, and what it was like. And it's interesting, you grow up around communism, and we'll talk about Dee Dee in another video. But I do want to just mention that Dee Dee explained that the Wright brothers had not invented the airplane at all. That just was totally untrue. That they had not invented it, but that I've got to dry this, you guys, and we'll tell you about who actually invented the airplane, according to Dee Dee. How are we doing? I might just stand up for a minute before I try to finish this, John. Maybe you could do your thing. I just have to stand up. I get so caught up in this that I have some flowers to put on and finish the rocking chair and some other things, but I just think I'll stand up for just a minute and stretch my legs so that I don't cramp up and can still walk tomorrow. Okay? I'll be right back. Here's John.
Here I am.
Well, show them the calendar. Show them the other pictures on the calendar. Okay, you have to help me get up. I let it go too long. Ah! Okay. All right, so John's gonna do that, and some of you may want to take a break too, but if not, John's got some stuff that's sort of show and tell why I'm kind of standing up and moving around a bit, you guys, because you can see that it's
We'll do the big
there's just a
ones
little
this
bit more to do in the picture, and
Go get on the machine thingy.
maybe I'll get on. Do you want to turn off my microphone so it's not vibrating? Is that still on? If I get on the machine, it'll vibrate.
I don't know. Let him suffer.
Well, I don't want to do that. That'll be a weird background noise. You want to just take it off and put it right there, and I'll go stand on the machine?
I don't know.
Huh? You know. Just got to stand on the machine a few minutes.
I should be able to mute these. There, you're muted.
I'm muted? Okay.
No, that's recording.
Okay. Is there a mute?
I just turned you off. There. Now you're muted.
Now yeah, okay.
Nobody should be able to hear you now.
Okay. If they do, we tried.
Yeah. Okay, so here's some of the other paintings that we did for our yearly members. These are the 12 by 6s, 12 by 16, 12 by 6. That's a funny size. And Miss Jules has claimed that one. That one I remember. I'm assuming she still wants that one. 12 by 16. Again, this was one of the earlier ones. This was before we did the story time. We were just painting. Do you have a problem with your boss?
No, I'm just saying that once somebody's claimed it, they claimed it.
Yeah. Oh, once they've claimed it, they've claimed it. No takey backies?
You can't go back and forth. Because we assign stuff to other things, right?
That's true. And it's a gypsy wagon we did with a little bunny. Again, this was a 12 by 16. This was done on absorbent ground. Wasn't that one done on absorbent ground too? No.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
Gypsy wagon was done on absorbent ground.
Yeah, that was the other absorbent ground one we did. Well, we did, yeah. Well, I guess we did. I did the absorbent ground part. I did the important part. Then a meadow. That was not, was that one absorbent ground too? Yep, that was absorbent ground too. I had a bunch of canvases made up for absorbent ground that we had other things slated for, but these came along to do first. And again, these are 3-year purple members are getting the 12 by 16s. And it's a watercolor, a waterfall one, fall, non-absorbent ground, just regular canvas. Kind of nice.
Explain how it works. So if you sign up for a year, you get. Explain all that.
Okay, if you sign up, well, you got a day left. Well, you got 2 days left. If you sign up for a red member or purple as a year, you get a 6 by 8 for red and an 8 by 10 for purple. And if you go for 2 years, you get a 9 by 12.
If you're purple only.
No, I think red also gets 9 by 12 if they go to 2 years.
Okay.
And then 3 years is 12 by 16.
And that's an annual membership of who?
That's an annual membership for what?
Of our art school, you know?
Of the art school, of the paintingwithginger.com, acrylic paintingwithgingercook.com, same website.
And why would anybody want to do that, John?
You want to sign up for the year or the red or the purple membership so you have access to the personal art coaching, where the personal art coaching helps you expedite your learning in acrylic painting.
Tell them how that works.
Now the way that works is you'll be painting along and say you got it. Well, let's go back to her painting. Let's say you're working on this painting here and you got to this point and you think, well, I don't know if I'm really doing a good job. Maybe I should have Ginger look it over. So you take a picture of it. And we have a special form for you to fill out called the personal art coaching form. And you send that picture into Ginger. Ginger will look it over, bring it into her computer, and then she'll start doing painting on it digitally to show you what enhances you may want to make or tell you what you've done good, where you might want to improve it, your lights and your darks, colors, or if you have a gray hand.
It's a video.
And it's a video. Typically a video. Sometimes if you've done an excellent job, she's just going to write you back and say, great job, bye. Not really.
I've been trying not to do that.
She's trying to do filming for everybody now.
Yeah, just if I can do it, I film for everybody simply because people want to know what I liked about it.
Yeah.
So everybody gets a conversation.
Everybody's getting a conversation now. So it's like having a personal chat with your coach. And you can send them in at any time. You have
YouTube. How many videos do we have on our website, John? Besides being a red member, why would you want to join? And we've got hundreds of videos on everything.
We have over 400 videos on our website
That are not YouTube videos.
that are not YouTube videos, that are just Ginger actually teaching and not chit-chatting with me or socializing with the crowd. She's just teaching you one-on-one, basically, step by step on how to do the painting. And they're broken down. We try to break them down to about 20 to 30-minute segments. We call them episodes. And that makes them bite-sized so you can work a little bit and then go, take a break. What else, boss?
Well, and also you want to mention this beginner. If you've never picked up a paintbrush, people think they have to.
Okay, if you're a beginner, never picked up a paintbrush, we have very, very beginning. They're called the one cookie lessons. They teach you how the brush works, what it does, different paints. Then we have some palette knife work. We take you from the very basic to a professional artist.
Yeah. And you learn the steps along the way. Things you have.
And you're learning the steps along the way. I don't think they can hear you, so I have to repeat everything you're saying.
Yeah, I'm just telling you what you have to repeat.
Oh, no, what I have to say.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a puppet.
Yeah, you have to say this, and then you got to tell them that it's self-paced.
Then it's self-paced. You can do this at 2 o'clock in the morning if you get up and...
But pick the videos that interest you in that category.
Pick the different... We'll have to do that sometime. I'll have to bring the website up and we'll do a little show on that. Maybe tomorrow we do a lesson tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow we're gone.
Yeah, tomorrow we're going. Tomorrow we have to actually do the work.
Okay, so I've
You've done?
Yeah.
You coming back?
Yeah. I've stood on the little machine and tripping up my legs here.
It's looking good. You're getting there.
Think so?
Yeah, well, you got quite a bit to go.
No, not so much.
No, I think you do. Well, I'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised.
I'll be
So
surprised.
turn the microphone back on.
Maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Well, then we can just.
Be nice and quiet for a change.
Okay.
Wait a minute, it's not coming back on.
Uh-oh.
That's the on button, isn't it?
I
Wait a minute.
I can't see what you're doing. It's behind me.
Hold that thought.
Whoops.
Not coming back on. Guess you have to go to mine. I'll be quiet.
Okay, these are brand new. I have to see when they're not
It
working.
might be charging or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Let me make sure I can hear you from here.
Okay, so John, we had to switch microphones. Okay.
I had to hold it longer so it would sync.
Okay. All right. So you got the spiel, right, about all that stuff? Yes and yes. You got the spiel on that, which is a good thing to get the spiel on. All right. Well, this has had a chance to dry, so that's always a good thing. John's told you some stuff, and I've stood up and moved around. So, are you doing that too when you're painting? Do you stand up every once in a while and remember to stand? Because I'm telling you what, I can get so lost in painting that I could just be sitting there painting for hours and never stand up.
Now you can hear me?
I can.
Of course you can hear me. You're in the same room. You silly
I can
goof.
hear you. Can you guys hear John?
Because I reset it. Yes, you have to hold it on when it's already running. Okay, so you can hear us both.
There, you can hear us both. Okay.
Back among the living.
But see, before we left off, we were talking about, I guess, hang gliding and aliens, and it was so interesting because I could never get anybody to talk about those aliens again. They just, though I've talked to other people, everybody's got an alien story. I'm telling you.
Alien story.
If you have an alien story, you want to leave it after the comments in the, and I will mention it. If you got something good, I'll talk about it. You guys got a good alien story you can share with me. We'll share it with others too, right? 'Cause inquiring minds want to know, right? Well, let's see, what did I do with this? Yeah, so that's the thing about stuff like that. You know, now it's coming out all in the news. You know, people are willing to own up to it, but back then no one wanted to be thought they were crazy. So they weren't just, nobody was going to talk about it. Oh my goodness. My reference photo, my reference photo had kind of a white shag rug, but that's hard to see with this. I might make that a color. Maybe I make that a light orange. It can't be an orange. I'll make it green. I'll do pink. Can't do beige. Well, maybe it has to stay a white rug. Okay. I'll put my little pens back and see what I'm playing with here. Maybe I'll just use a brush and put some more white paint there. That's what it needs. But on all those little trips we took, you know, when we, Colby went down to you know, fly his hang glider down there in La Jolla, Southern California, a place called Black's Beach. When he went down there to fly his hang glider, I would take my paints and paint, and because we had a generator in the motorhome, and I was still doing acrylic paints then too, and so he would paint, and I would paint, and he would fly hang gliders. And then when we weren't flying hang gliders, the guys would all come in to the motorhome, and I'd make lunch for people, and then we'd talk more hang gliders. Everybody still wanted to talk hang gliders, and then in the mornings, because they only flew in the afternoons, in the mornings, we would take the motorhome, because we actually camped out on the top of that hill for free. But you couldn't do it now, but back then you could. We had our motorhome, we had our condo rented out, and we stayed on the top of that hill, and then we'd drive down into La Jolla, and we'd go to the fabric store, because I did a lot of sewing. I did a lot of sewing. Besides painting, I was doing sewing in the motorhome while they were waiting for the wind to be right so they could jump off that cliff. And the thing about the hang gliders is, and a lot of people got killed for a lot of different reasons, but one of the things that you know, was a real killer on that, something like that, okay, was that they took their hang gliders apart each time, and put them back together, okay? So, everything got rolled up into a bag, okay? So, if you did it wrong, and you didn't tighten a screw or a bolt or something, and it was quite involved to put this hang glider back together. If you missed something and you didn't do it right, you could be up in the air and the thing could come undone. Seriously, that could happen. It could come, absolutely could come undone. You know, fall apart and you would just go tumbling out of the sky like Icarus. Remember Icarus?
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, people never thought about this stuff, but that was there were some real dangers in flying these hang gliders. It was just a dangerous thing to do. And you know, if everybody says, well, what's Cinnamon's dad, who's now 87, what's he doing now? Well, what he's doing is
Riding dirt bikes.
he's riding dirt bikes in the mountains, electric dirt bikes in the mountains with kids about the same age as that, you know, those young people flying hang gliders. He's and barreling into trees and getting hurt and honestly, you know,
Having a grand old time.
he's having a great time. Just, you know, what's the expression of daredevil? That's what he liked. He got the adrenaline. You know what it was, and what I realized with these guys, and this is my pen shaking in case you were wondering what little noise was. What I realized about these guys was that it was the adrenaline rush. There was such an adrenaline rush that they got addicted to adrenaline rush like people get addicted to cocaine. And that's what would kill them. That's just Ginger's. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying that was my observation. Could be totally wrong, but that's what I observed. How's that? That's what I observed happening.
Oh, when you were painting down by the beach and all, did you do paintings of Black Beach or the stairs there?
I never did.
Oh, I can't believe it. Right there, you never did it.
No, I really
no
hated
idea.
it. I've got to tell you though,
PJ's asking that one.
yeah, no, I never did. I never did. And this has to come down to here. Don't know why I can't seem to get this right here. No, PJ, I never did. I never did. But I remember Cinna was just going into first grade when we got back, and we got her maybe kindergarten. We got her a bicycle with training wheels, and which was kind of neat, right? And I remember trying to teach her how to ride it. We were in La Jolla and had stopped off in this park, this lovely park that she could ride on pavement and learn how to ride it. And I remember just yelling at her, keep your balance, keep your balance. And, you know, that was apparently not sufficient instruction for whatever reason. It's just, you know.
Made sense to you.
And her dad actually gave her some instruction on how to ride it. All right. And we get behind her and push and run along beside her. And pretty soon she learned to ride a bicycle up there. So, I mean, you know, you just do the best you can, don't you?
That's all you can do.
But yeah, she I love it that acrylics dry darker, but golly, you know, golly gee. Want my flowers in the shade to be blue and my other flowers to be white. Okay. I just like this painting because I just thought it had a certain charm to it, doesn't it?
It does.
Sometimes you can get stuff too straight, and then it looks mechanical. Just soften some lines there. I was doing something. Oh, here. So yeah, no. We didn't, you know. He, like I say, so he's flying around. Now he's got the motorcycle engine on the hang glider, and we're living in Southern California, and he's got the really, he's all set, right, with this hang glider thing. And we had to carry the hang glider up behind the house on top of these old tomato fields. There used to be tomato fields back there. And he would get his run from there because it was up even higher the hill. So somehow it still involved me helping carry it up where he could put it together. And I found the whole thing just totally tedious and boring. We were always making deals. I'll do this if you do this kind of stuff, because I just, oh, you guys, you can't. I didn't enjoy that experience. Okay? So I remember what I was trying to do here. It's okay, so anyhow, Colby, you know, his flights didn't last too long, and we heard from one neighbor a little bit. She came down to see us, but tell us that she didn't appreciate him flying his hang gliders like that. And
well, that's nice of her to be so concerned.
yeah, she didn't like it, and she didn't like the noise of his motorcycle engine. And but we weren't the only people that she didn't like. She had a beautiful little house up the road, up Fortuna Ranch Road, and it looked like something out of a storybook. It was. She had designed it. She had these real, I'd say real flower gardens, but you guys know what I mean. I mean, just like really something out of a fairy book, and there were roses growing all over her house, and it looked like Thomas Kincaid had designed the house before there was a Thomas Kincaid doing anything. It was kind of before his time, but still, it did look like that, right? And just kind of soften this a little bit, and she really hated that we were out there in the country, and it was because we had over 2 acres. It was a testing ground for airplanes and helicopters, and for some reason she found that. You may have heard this, but I have to read. You can't tell the story without telling about that. So she called up the people that were making the helicopter over there in Carlsbad. She called them up, and she said that she didn't want them to be flying over her property. And they said, well, madam, this is, the state of California, we have permission, blah, blah, blah. And so finally she made such a fuss that they came out to see her. And she had the aerial map of the area where we lived, right? And she says to him, this is where I live. I do not want to see any helicopters or anything like that over my property. I don't want to hear them. And guess what? I just don't. You're not going to do that, okay? So they looked at her and they said, lady, you don't own the airspace. We can do whatever we want. And she was a little wacky to begin with, okay? And she looked at them and she points her finger down to the ground and one swoopy thing and up to the sky, and she says, I own from here to God. And if I love that expression, I own from here to God. And if you ever fly over my property, I will shoot you down. And she showed them their rifle. She said, I'll shoot you down. And you know they believed her. I don't think she would have shot him down. I certainly hope
Yeah,
not. But they couldn't take the chance, could
nope.
they couldn't take the chance, no. There was this, it wasn't possible to take the chance. So anyway, that was just out of colors, and that's what's happening. I'm trying to mix a color right now. I can't mix because I don't have it out anymore. Anyway, so they never did, and Colby would for a while. It's hard. I just had no enthusiasm. If he could have done it all by himself, I just was out of enthusiasm for carrying his stupid hang glider anywhere. If you want to go do it, just don't involve me. Well, suddenly becomes my problem. Then, we're not for it anymore. Wasn't for it anyway, but that really kind of. And then we got into other things, horseback riding. We did a lot of, and that's another story on that too. So, I'm curious though if anybody, later will write us and say they have an alien story. So I've heard a few, and they're always interesting, aren't they?
Always.
When people have something like that. The trick here, what I'm trying to do is get this beige color and still have it show up over here as something. Okay, so that's kind of working. It's just, everything is about contrast, right? So my deal here is to, keep painting the contrast on all of this until everything kind of shows up, because the first few layers that don't, it's not, and I don't like that. So, like for instance, that's kind of dark right there, so I'm just going to change that. Soften that blue. And I think I want to make that lighter. But I've been painting with acrylic since 1965, and back when nobody ever heard of them. And a lot of the reasons why, if you're joining our art school academy, if you're just signing up for that, okay, one of the things you might, even if you've been painting a long time, I have tips and way to do stuff. I have figured out stuff how to do things, but a lot of people have not, because that's not how, they treated it. I never treated it like it was a watercolor, okay? And that makes, and all that makes a difference. So one of the things we tell people is that you may learn some stuff of things that I do that other people may not. And even down to how we varnish. I've got a video on YouTube on how to varnish, and John's got another one on the tech. If you haven't signed up for our Tech Bear, the Tech Bear video, John, he only has like about 2,000 subscribers. What's wonderful on the Tech Bear, mostly I use the Tech Bear platform to, oh, just missed that here completely. Here, let me do this. I use it for personal art coaching, because I can very easily put a video up there, and then you just have the only people, somebody just has the the people has access to it. You just, because you're the only one that has access to the videos. You have your own private video, but that's where we store them. Then you can then put them in a playlist and refer to them later, so forth. So okay. So anyhow, I think I need a different brush. But I don't know if John explained it very well. I was kind of, sitting on my little exercise machine, kind of shaking up my legs and shouting bits of encouragement in the background. You may have noticed. White is an interesting color. Sometimes you need like a couple coats of white. You think you've got white, but you don't. I've been painting for a long time. And back when I started painting with acrylics, they weren't, people didn't know what to do with them. They were hard to get into art shows.
It was a new medium. Nobody trusted it.
It was a new medium, and kind of like airbrush. Now airbrush is accepted. Or even, I'll give you a good example of that. When cell phones first came out and weren't taking pictures, could have the picture phones came out. Boy, that makes it sound old when I say that. But when
picture phones.
Picture phones, right? The picture phones. There were photographers that were, instead of kind of abandoning their cameras and using cell phones, and they had art shows and contests. See, a little bit of dot of something makes. And then, now that, of course, the cameras get better all the time, and, it's a different deal, right? But back then, it wasn't considered real, you weren't going to get real photographers had to have the fancy cameras, right? Yes and yes? So, that's it. Now, and so acrylics, when they first came out, were just not thought of in a positive way for a long time. One of the reasons that I decided to paint this was I was extremely enamored with with these flowers falling over the balcony. I just thought that was pretty. And I thought that, I could do some sort of version of this that would be really nice. I hope it is. And I hope that whoever gets this loves it.
How could you not?
Hope this is something. That is something that, what?
I'm going to show you something.
Okay. Oh.
You can go back to what you were doing.
Oh, that's cute, though.
It was suggested.
Oh, someone suggested that?
Yep.
Well, that would make more sense to me.
Well,
I like that. All right, so I may not. It has been suggested that I put a cat on top of the rocking chair. I think, I've got some sort of rug that's going on there, but it's pretty plain. I think a cat, and I couldn't decide what color to make this either.
well, you put that orange cat on it.
But I think if I put the orange cat on it, it would look pretty good, don't you think?
That was Debbie's suggestion.
Debbie, that's a good suggestion. Why don't you send Debbie Debbie, write us and you can have a free downloadable lesson up to $75. Just we'll give you a code. Thank you very much for the suggestion, for participating. Yes and yes? I think that's great. So if I'm going to put a cat on here, which I think is a wonderful suggestion, by the way, I think that's a really good idea. Let me just dry this and figure out how I'm going to draw a cat on there, because I think an orange cat would be pretty on there. Don't you guys think so?
You may want to put it in the back of the chair first, because the cat comes up pretty high into the back of the chair.
Yeah, I think I'll put the back of the chair in first. I think that is an excellent suggestion, John. And let me just shake this Posca pen up really well and get the back of the chair in there. And
now, do you have a preference between Posca and Artistos?
the Poscas are a little bit, the pen's a little bit wider. I think this is a wider pen. And the white's a little wider, I think. I like them both. I tell you what, I like them both. Gotta shake that up even more. So, and again, we're doing this on absorbent ground, which is a little bit, it's nice for the background. It's a little more tricky for the details, right?
It grabs it.
You know, because it kind of grabs it. But let's just put the, we'll do that. Now, it's getting close to 6 o'clock. Some people are going to be very tired of me putting in this, but okay. So I think if I start here, let's see, where'd that white one go? Where's that white pencil? You know, I had it handy. Here it is. Probably a little easier to see this. I want to start here. And I'm not going to put as many rungs in as the original chair. I'm just going to put in a few, I think. I think I'll do about 4. Let's see, let me just, that's got to be, well, see, I have that there. That can't be there. That's got to be, that's part of the windowsill, and I don't want those lines there, because that was the chair before. So just let me get rid of that. See, the Posca pens on something like this, you can kind of add a little detail, something like that. All right, so we're saying that this is where we want the, let's get this way out of the way so I can use this thing. So if I want to say, I want to go over this. I think we had some wider ones too, don't we? We had a fatter Posca pen. Do you remember where those are, John? We had some fat ones. These are the fine ones, but I think this is a fat one. I know we had some that are not fine point. They have two. They have the fine, you know, extra fine point, and then they have ones that are not. This is one that's not. Okay.
It's a 0.7 millimeter.
0.7. No, it doesn't go up here. Okay. Stops right there. The trick on something like this is what you do is you, like I say, I didn't want to do all of them. So you do the 2 outside ones and then work your way on the inside, okay? Now, if this was shaken up really well, that would be much wider. But I agree with John that putting that in before I, you know, draw the cat in. I'll tell you what I might do. I don't know that I'll film the cat. I will put the cat in, but maybe let's see. There we go. I don't want to talk too much about these rails either. And then I can say that they have a blue shading on them. Oh, that one I didn't open. Here, let's try this one. sometimes on something like this, you just have to see the shadow. So, yeah, that looks pretty good with the rungs. This needs to be wider, and I can do that. Just sometimes if you just have a darker shadow, that can make a difference. Oh yeah, and this one goes back over here. It comes up. There's a rung that goes across the back here. And then this one comes up, follows this line this way. Okay. Well, you just have to figure out where that's going. All right, there you go. So, yeah, that's a good idea, John. We'll put the cat in. I guess people probably are just, really a cat, honestly. But who else would not want to sleep on a rocking chair but a cat, right? All right, so sometimes you just have to change the contrast experience for this. And then the cat will go right here. Do you have a little cat the right size I can trace on a piece of paper? And I just trace it on, then I won't get it wrong.
You want that one I gave you?
Yeah, do that one. Just do that one. It's fine. Just to make it a little tiny, and I can kind of trace it on. Then I'll get the right shape, and I don't have to think too hard about it. I know that's sort of a cop out, but
Kind of a cop out, don't you think?
just it just kind of. Let's see. I just want this wider. I just keep shaking these pens up. They really have to be shaken up pretty well, like that, right? And and also, this is absorbent ground, so your color disappears. That's the other thing that happens when you're painting something like this. Is absorbent ground doesn't keep the color. It sucks it in. All right? So you may have to go over it. One thing you can do with absorbent ground, I'll just share this with you guys that have hung in there to watch this, is that if you get to a point where you're feeling like it's just still sucking up your paint, and what you can do is you can take some matte varnish, and you can varnish what you've painted so far, where you want to have some detail. Say like that cat. If I might have done that if I didn't have enough paint, and then what would happen would be the then it would seal it just like it was a regular canvas, and then it wouldn't absorb anymore. So this really does act an awful lot like paper when you're first using it. Okay. All right, so that worked pretty well. And then, wherever there's a light, there's a dark. So you've got to have the contrast either on the wall or something. So this shows up. And then it's implied, okay? Contrast is implied at that point. For some reason, I can't get the back of this chair bright enough. Okay.
Where's the printer not working?
So John's getting the,
Trying to.
getting the cat image for me to put on there, which, you notice I'm just not making up a cat, I'm getting a reference. You know, he found a couple, and then we're going to get it. I will just trace the cat on so I get him the right proportion. Hopefully. That's the plan anyway, yeah. And then we'll put a little cat in there. These are the kind of things that people always ask, you know, why do you paint? I love, painting for me is very relaxing. I hope it's relaxing for you. You know, it's, if you're feeling a little down and everything, pick up a paintbrush and paint your feelings. It's great, painting is great therapy. It really is. I'm not saying I need therapy, but I'm just saying that it's one. Well, probably I do, but you know, it's one of the things that you can, you know, it's a wonderful hobby, or just. And what sometimes will happen to people, is he's getting this. I'll explain it to you. Was that when people take up painting, oftentimes they'll have a friend or something, and that friend will ask them to paint something for them, or maybe they decide that maybe they'll take a commission. I'll pay you to paint it, and nothing. You know, my acrylic, my painting journey has always been, has not. You know, that's fine. It's always been a business for me, always. From the time I started with it, it was a business. And as fast as I sold things, and I sold things. I sold my artwork. In fact, there was a kind of a joke in the family that Cinnamon's dad said that if your mother hasn't sold something, she's not happy. But that was me. But I've watched over the years that this is a wonderful hobby, and people that get caught up in the selling it, the business of it, it then becomes it's not a hobby anymore, and it can. Not always, but it can take some of the joy out of it. Does this make sense? Out of the fun of painting, it can take the joy out of it. So what, did you find something, John, or are you still working on it?
It's not printing. I don't know why yet.
It's not printing? Well, that's not good.
It says it's ready to print.
Well, the microphone didn't want to work. The printer didn't want to go. My goodness. Okay, so let's start with the contrast. Wherever there's a light, there's a dark. I want these flowers to show up. I'm kind of enamored with putting the cat on there now. You can take it downstairs?
Yep.
We have a printer downstairs too. And then we just technology failure can be so really upsetting, right? Just now the cat's going to go on here, but I know that there'll be a little bit of a rug. Let's see, I'll use a Posca pen for that. Almost getting this. Little, here's our chair and flowered balcony. This was a shag rug. Kind of a blanky thing that went on here. This is where Posca pens come in handy. This reminds me of the rocking chairs that get sold, are sold at Cracker Barrel. There's a store in the United States called Cracker Barrel. It's a restaurant store. And one of the things I've appreciated about Cracker Barrel was that after COVID, I didn't see their prices go up. Maybe some of you did, but John and I travel quite a bit. And I did not see them raise their prices, which I thought was pretty terrific. So as John's getting all that, I can get my highlights going here with my pen. What's fun about this painting is the light on the balcony to me too. The reflected light on the balcony. And I really kind of like the lights in this. So John's getting out my cat. We got the cat coming, you guys. I'm going to give this a good dry. And I appreciate it. I'm just, for the most part, I'm having a lot of fun painting these. And hope you're having fun hanging out with us. And we appreciate you guys very much. On Mondays, we do a tutorial. This New Year's, we'll be doing something. I'm not sure what, but
yes, we do. We know exactly what
we're going to do something on New Year's Eve at 5:30, or New Year's Day, not New Year's Eve.
Yep, New Year's Day.
It'll be New Year's Day, which is the 1st. And
I understand that's when New Year's Day is.
well, John, people may not know.
It's not on the 1st. New Year's
know?
Day is not on the 1st. Really?
Now,
Did they move it?
just for those of you who want to know these things, I said I was going to give a good dry here, but I had to just do a shade. For you who may not know it, Cinnamon's husband, John Cooney, his birthday is on the 1st. No, New Year's Eve. It's New Year's Eve. And when he was a kid, growing up, his parents always went out, and so he doesn't have really great birthday memories. So if you guys think about it, give a shout out to Mr. Cooney on his birthday, you guys. He'd just probably kill me for saying that, but do it anyway. Do it anyway. So where am I now with the cat?
Have you tried it?
No.
No, I'm not coming over there yet.
Okay.
Let's see if this will line up with anything you got there.
Think it will?
I'm hoping it will. Not bad.
Let's see where.
Flopping right in there. Yep. No, you're in tighter. Hold on a second. Maybe do that to you. His tail, yeah.
Why don't we just cut him out?
You want tighter?
I can take scissors and cut him out. And then I can just put him where I want him.
We don't want it too small.
No, not too small, but just around a cat. To leave the rest of it just around where the cat is.
About like yay.
Let's see. So,
You probably want a little bit more from the bottom so you can see it.
well, now I don't know where this is.
It's not.
No, that's not helpful.
It is helpful. That's exactly where he's at.
Yeah.
That's the up, that's the arm, that's the over.
Okay, yeah, that's where he's at. Okay. So I guess I'll get a little piece, I'll tape this down. Get a piece of blue. So let's just hope this works, you guys. What do you think? Assuming I can get the cat to look like this.
You can. You can do anything.
Okay.
Then you tried it, it didn't go on right. We can wipe it off and do it again.
That's true. I don't know, John. He moved. Here, move. Let's get this out of the way. Let's put this somewhere. Let's see. Where are you, kitty? Yeah. Okay. So there. All right. Pen. He is so small. Yeah, it's gonna work. All right, we'll just see if I can't put him in there, yes, you guys. I don't know. This is a really, this is a real challenge.
Oh, you're up to a real
I
challenge.
don't know, John.
Yeah, you are.
You know, I don't know.
You're my hero.
Yeah, but don't do that, because I don't know. You know? He's got an awfully big head on him in your picture. I may be really sorry I did this. Worked a long time on this painting. I'll be really sorry if this messes it up. I'm with you guys, right? It's really easy. Are you kidding me? It's really easy to mess stuff up. You don't have a plan. You didn't put him in here to begin with. And then he'll look too big or weird. Then I'll have to paint it all over again and have to show people what it looks like the next day. That's a little tragic, don't you think? good rule of thumb on this is to kind of paint a base color. All right, let's just see if we even, before I go much further and dry it, do you think that fits?
I think you're looking cute.
Yeah, you guys, anybody else?
The other versions, and you guys like the cat? Do we keep the cat or get rid of the cat? Before it's dried.
I
Once it's dried, we're committed. Yes and yes, keep the cat.
Okay. All right. Because now we're owners of this cat, however it turns out, right?
Now we have to feed it.
This is going to require some real thought. Okay. Keep the cat, huh? Where's my other paint? Okay, you guys, I mean, there we go. Let's, this is, when you paint stuff this small, like if this painting were larger, it would be easier to do something like this because you've got a little leeway with the colors, okay? But when you're painting something this small, this is much harder to paint because you're almost, you almost have to, put on your magnifying glasses to see what you're painting. At least I do. Because you can only paint what you can see. So all I'm doing now is just painting in the shadows. And I can only go with the idea that something is either lighter or darker than something else. Let's try what I got. So it's going to be, can't think of stories and focus on cat, you guys. I can only focus on cat, you know.
You should have made it a dog instead then.
Huh?
Should have made it a dog.
Well, if a dog would have been a little easier, yeah. This just requires some layers here, you guys. The problem is when you change colors, these brushes don't hold enough liquid. So I'm sorry, I wish I could tell more stories now, but you have stumped the artist.
You're doing fine. You're just flies on the walls anyways. We can get the bug spray out later.
Let me dry this. And believe it or not, the canvas is rough. You'd think it would be smooth because we have the absorbent ground on it, but there's slightly rough. Oh my goodness, John, I should just stop the video and I'll paint it and do it later or something. But I'm still painting it.
We can finish it up later.
Huh?
We can finish it up later.
Well, no, I'll do it now because, you know, you committed me. This is your fault, you know.
I don't want to commit you, honey. You're not that loony toony.
This is your fault. But if I dry it enough in between, we can get it. Just interesting. It's such a little area. To me, it's such a little area to try and get paint.
You're really putting those little brushes to test.
Yeah, I mean, honestly. Now, if I were doing this 12 by 16, this cat would be a lot easier to put in.
Cat would be 4 times bigger than he is.
Well, yeah, and there's a reason why you don't put animals in this small a painting, because it is too small to try and really get much with them. You know, even just the slightest little bit of color, right, is a little tricky. It's all right, we're doing it now. I'm going to just whine and complain the whole time because
I enjoy your whining and complaining.
I'm just going to do that because
You can.
it really much requires that, right? It's that dark brown Posca. Also, I had a lot of paint on here anyway from that's kind of rough surface anyway, because I had a lot of paint on there from the other thing I was doing, right? Kitty wasn't planned immediately, yes? Okay. That's all right. We'll put the cat in. Just
Yeah, if you hear about this all night long. Thanks, guys.
yeah, you're gonna hear about. You are gonna hear about it all night long, man.
All night long.
You are gonna hear about
Cat.
us all night long. You know, I was doing just fine. Would have had this painting done, you know, and just finished up
But
in a
oh
few
no,
minutes.
had to put a cat in there.
And even though I don't think the cat's a bad idea,
I
I think the cat is a good design. It's very difficult to add something that hasn't been planned and after the fact. And it's a tricky one.
But you're my hero.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is that so?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do anything.
Let's try what we've got. I just wanted to have a little paw here somewhere. Just you do one little thing and then the picture's gone.
What do you mean it's gone?
I'm saying it's gone.
It's not
You
gone.
do one tiny little thing and, you know, something that you painted a minute ago is gone. You know? So that's the bugaboo on this,
The bugaboo.
you know.
I remember the old bugaboo.
My goodness. There we go. Now let's drying. This has kind of ruined the Storytime thing. We're gonna lose views on this. You know, it'd be one thing if we were if I don't have my glasses on, I can't see a thing.
Well, I was just putting them on. Just going out on a limb on this one.
All right, let's try it again. I just need it light above the eyes. Okay. Maybe I need to change brushes. All right, hang on. The thing is, you just can't get the paint where I want it to go. I know where I have to have the paint, and it's just not going there. That's upsetting. This was just...
Maybe the Salvador paints would be
What's that?
Using the Salvador paints because they're
It
thinner.
wouldn't make any difference. This is so rough now from painting that chair that now I just, you try to do something like this with detail. And
Gotcha.
it's you can't get the detail because the paint's too rough. It just wants to bounce all over. It's like trying to paint detail on a piece of gravel.
Gotcha.
But
bumpy road.
you know, that's all it is. It's just, that's why you see me drawing all the time. Because I'm trying to compensate for the fact that the paint is so, that the surface is so rough that I'm painting on. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's too small. And that's why, you know, some of those ones that we've designed for our lessons, we can't make them little. You know, they have to be larger paintings because,
Nobody could paint them.
yeah, no, I can, you know, and I learned this lesson a long time ago about trying to do little things. And I'm sort of getting the cat there anyway, in spite of all my whining. It's sort of showing up, right?
Yeah, I'm afraid you are.
But I'm just drawing it. I need to get the light on it, right? I think what we'll do is we'll not talk about this paw. We're going to have this come over here like that. I'm just not going to talk about that. Sometimes that's all you can do. If you can't get the detail the way you want it, don't discuss it. Yeah? There's our little blankie. And it's going to come over here like that. Let's see, what am I looking for? Okay. I think we're getting the cat. I just don't have quite enough light on the fur yet that I want, but I'll get it. See what a big line that made? Even though I'm using the tiniest brush possible. There we go. The only way to get a thin line on this is to paint a fat one and then dry it and then paint over it, you know, skinning it up because I can't get it small enough. All right, you're just not going to do it. Let's change brushes. I can do that. I know how to do that. I can just get a different brush. There we go. That brush wasn't holding enough paint for me to do anything. You know? This is white and yellow oxide. Let's see what I can do with that. Put a tiny bit of orange in it. Okay, now he's looking a little less like a stuffy and more like a cat. Where did I put that tube of paint here? All right, let's try this again. What is that expression? There's only one way to block a cat, right? There's more than one way too.
Yeah.
In this case, we can say that that's true. So we will just reshape the face in just a bit here. Got to make it a little bit darker. There we go. Got a little round. Ah, yes. Okay. He's got a light highlight on his tail. You wouldn't think it would take like 30 minutes to put a cat in, would you? What's it taking, about an hour to get him in?
No, not even. Come on. You are whining. You sound like me.
Yeah, huh?
You would just be whining, whining, whining.
That's it. That's me. Okay.
It's a good-looking cat.
Just, I think it does add to the painting to have the cat. I really do. I think it just adds to the nostalgia of the cat on the painting, and for sure, right? But just getting that cat there. Let's dry him. So I kind of like his face now. Yeah, this is where you want the. Hey, did you hear that the people have gone on to Amazon to try to buy the Aristo pens, and they're sold out
I don't know why.
because we've been talking about them, and you know what it'll do. So if they're sold out, don't go back and buy them for a while. And I'll tell you why, because they'll check the price, because they'll probably, what Amazon, in my experience, has a habit of doing, okay, is you know, if something sells out, the price goes up the next day. You guys notice that?
On some things.
On some things. So just
Not all things.
Don't get
Don't get suckered in.
don't get suckered in because we like these.
He's so cute. Look like Jasper.
Yeah, see how many layers of paint it took to do him?
That's his fur. We're going for realism.
Okay.
I like it.
You like him?
Yep. I think it was worth all your whining.
You guys think it was worth all my whining
I suffered through it.
to put him in?
Yeah.
Well, you know, let's just let me do a couple little things. Huh?
Under the chair. That one.
Oh,
Got to finish him.
all right. You could just tell me I just didn't finish the bottom rail under the chair. Okay, got that.
Everybody was concerned about it.
I think there'd be a shadow here where he's sitting. Maybe purple. And then this is why you've got to do white a couple times, because the white wasn't showing up as white on his blankie at all. The little pillow wasn't showing up. All right, so now this is not as many lights and darks that have to come on the painting. You guys, I will have John put it in a frame. It is not done. I will have to go back and add some more lights and darks. So the good news is the absorbent ground, you know, gave us a sort of watercolor effect. The bad news is that there's a few more details to do, and I'm not going to bore you with them. But you get us a frame, John, to let people see where we are with the frame on this. Because like I say, it's not done. I understand that. But this is as much as we're going to do tonight, and I'll finish it. And next time you're tuning into one of these things, we'll show you guys the final one. This definitely needs more time than I'm willing to put in right now.
Well, you've been here long enough on it. You don't go longer than this.
And also, I want it to dry overnight and see what happened. But let's just put it in a frame and let you guys see. Let me give it a good dry. Thanks for the cat suggestion. As much as I was whining about the cat, which I still whining because you just don't want to do anything that little. I think we did get the cat in, don't you think?
You got the cat in.
You know, and I'm happy with his face. So it's just the thing about it's a good lesson. You know, that itself is a good lesson on why not to do something.
Pick him up.
Okay.
Put him down. Here we go.
I'll just hold him. Okay.
Yeah. That looks good. Looks good in that frame too.
Yeah, I like the bit of the orange cat over here. The tabby cat over here kind of goes with the side of the building a little bit. So I like I like that look. So I think the cat did add something to the chair. So, you know, whoever suggested it, the whole time I was complaining, it's not your fault. I just complaining.
Well, you know.
But again, there's a little bit more to do with this. I just don't want to do any more right now.
No, it's got to fully dry, fully
And it's got to
cure.
fully dry, and then I'll come back and, because the whites in the certain places where I really want the whites to show up, they're not showing up enough, but they will. But I probably won't do anything else to the cat. I think the cat,
Cat's good.
the cat's fine. So listen, we love you guys, and thanks for watching Storytime. I hope you enjoyed some of the earlier stories. Hope you liked the story about Aunt Sally. I always think that, you know, my mother sort of had her comeuppance with Aunt Sally or whatever, you know what I mean? With Aunt Sally finding kind of winning in the end. She was a nice person, never held it against my mother, never said a word against them, even though they deserved it.
Okay, on that note, I think we'll be signing off.
All right, bye, Happy New Year.
Bye, everyone. We'll see you on the first of the year, which happens to be January 1st, which happens to be Monday. 5:30.
Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and share these videos with people if you're liking them. We'd appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Ciao.
Bye.
Where's the off button?